Let me go ahead and share my screen. Take me just a moment here. Entire screen. Ice diving. All right, who's excited to ice dive? It is a lot of fun. You cannot see, but in my background behind me, my blushing bride is sitting enjoying. Let me see if I can turn off the background here. Let's see. Visual effects, I believe that's where that's at. So we'll turn off effect. There we go. Now you can see. You can also see my microphone, unfortunately. This is my blushing bride in the background, who is absolutely a fabulous diver. She is also my assistant instructor in all things, and has unfortunately had the opportunity to sit through more classes than any one human should have to ever. So she's stuck with me, and we got tech certified together. We got ice dive certified together. We have got a bajillion dives together, and she sat through all my instructor courses. I think the only part you didn't make it through was the actual classroom portion when I was doing my instructor evaluation. And the water port. And the water port. So she didn't have to sit through that portion. She got to sit in the hotel room and enjoy the hotel.
I was around. I just wasn't fully part of it.
So, but she sat through my tech instructor portion. So every portion that you can imagine, my poor wife has sat through. She will be assisting us on Saturday as well. So we're going to be ice diving on Saturday. I'm super excited for you guys because this is one of my favorite things to do. It's definitely a very different experience. My goal today is, as I don't know if you can see the slide or not, but I am going to be a pencil sharpener, and I'm going to sharpen your skills. Truth is not that much different than anything else that we do in diving. We just need to realize that this is an overhead environment, and it is cold. So you guys are all competent divers at this point, and some of us are. Let's see, Aaron. Oh, here comes Aaron as well. Aaron is learning to be a dive guide and a fantastic instructor, or instructor wannabe as well. So I just hit admit for him. So we'll see if that worked. I don't see him on the list. Oh, here he comes. Okay, so Aaron is joining us as well, and will not be joining us on Saturday, but just joining us for this class. I am finishing his dive master tomorrow, and his site at technical extended range pool sessions and setup tomorrow. So that's pretty exciting. All right, so I've got a fun video. I don't know if oh, that's right. All my videos went away when I converted it back over to. I apologize. So we don't get to watch the cool videos because unfortunately I was not as smart as I thought I was. I converted this from Keypoint to PowerPoint, and I lost all my video links. So I apologize. My qualifications to teach this: I'm an extended range instructor, ice diving instructor, as well as a dive master instructor as well. So that's my qualifications. Throughout the slides, you'll notice I take a pride in using pictures of my wife and I that are actually us. So it's kind of fun. So if you have a question about the picture, just ask us. If it's a bad photo, then it won't be from us. It's from the book. It's a good photo. It's us. So try and personalize my presentations as much as possible. So the Idaho Dive Pirates Ice Diving course is designed to prepare the student with enough special preparation, education, experience, understanding of the special considerations needed for ice diving, as well as the safety required to be able to plan, execute with an equally certified team of at least 3 certified ice divers and 2 service support individuals to dives under fresh water ice that contains no current. And that's important to know that we're not going to train you. That's a whole different class, and it's a very different set of skills to deal with current in an overhead environment. So this course is designed to help participants in understanding how diving under ice has special appeal, but a fairly extensive preparation. I like jokingly say on the ice that this is a very entourage intensive sport. You do not ice dive alone. I have yet to see somebody go out and ice dive alone and think that looked like a good idea. So there's definitely, this is a team and entourage intensive sport. We'll talk about the specific dive guide or dive equipment that's involved in this. It's also appropriate to add in here that exposure is definitely a big consideration in what we do. Typically on the ice, I've seen anywhere from 14 degrees to 30 degrees air temperature, and I've seen actually colder than that as well. I think the coldest we did ice dive was 2 or 3 degrees air temperature. The good news is the water is warmer than the air temperature. You were going to get up to a blistering 36 degrees, I would imagine, in the water. So nice and warm. The interesting part is I was doing some dives a few weeks ago in the ice, and my hands were getting cold even through my dry suit. And I had one more diver that I needed to do with, and I thought, no big deal. I'm going to power through this. My fingers getting cold, and I was a little worried about that. I'm tough, right? And I went down, and as soon as I got down, within about 2 or 3 minutes, my fingers warmed up. The air temperature had chilled me enough that that I got cold, and the water was warmer than the ice. And I've had that happen more than once, where I've gotten in colder water. Redfish is another great example. We were doing a dive there. We were so cold. We were doing wet gloves that day with not like smart people, but and we actually got in the water and felt warmer. So it's not uncommon, but it definitely is. It is misleading, and we'll talk about that special considerations. So welcome to ice diving. The ice diving has 2 parts. We're going to talk about the classroom and all the theory pieces, and I'll go through and we'll have a final exam that I will email it to you. I'm really mean. I am not like SSI or Patty or Dowie. I like essay questions. I hate multiple choice questions if I can get away from it, because I think you could guess them, and you should be able to get about 50% of them right, just because 2 are stupid answers, 2 are close to each other, and if you guess 50-50 of the time, you probably get it right. Essays tend to give me a better understanding of what you really understand and what you really don't understand. And it gives me an understanding in the type of answers where you're at as well. So this, again, I can't express this enough. This does not cover diving in salty water or locations with current. Those require special training as well. We will not also be diving anything other than daylight hours. Night ice diving just does not sound like a lot of fun to me. I mean, it's the cool thing is being able to see the ice. There's nothing cool that comes out at night under the ice that I can imagine us wanting to go see, unless we were in Antarctica or something. And then we're going to not dive any deeper than 20 meters due to the cold. Although, interestingly enough, as we all kind of know, diving Idaho, there is a reverse thermocline. So the deeper you go, the warmer it gets. But interestingly enough, can't stress this enough. The interesting stuff in ice diving is not deep. The interesting stuff is within the first 10 to 20 feet. I'm playing with the ice, maybe 30 feet if you're feeling particularly interested. And one of my things I like to do is I like to roll over on my back, look straight up at about 30 feet, and just enjoy looking at the immense ice above me. So that's going deep. Every student, I think I've yet to have a student that doesn't do this, that the first thing they do is, I want to go see the bottom, and they hit down to that 60-foot mark. And I'm like, okay, I as your instructor, I will go where you go. We're staying within the limits. I'm good. And they'll go down to the 60-foot mark. They'll check it out. And lo and behold, it is sand or dirt. It doesn't change ice. It is dirt. You might luck out. You might find a crawdad. I found a crawdad last time. I brought him back up just for fun. I did go and save some lost items that the sheriff's deputies had lost. They had lost, let's see, what did they lose? They lost a weight pocket. They lost something else, a light. They lost the light. So I went down and I was able to search and recovery for the light. Interesting enough, fun story. I'll teach you this later, but 4 tugs on a rope means help pull me out, right? If the line tender gives you 4 tugs, it means come out of the hole now. Right. And so I'm down there, and this one deputy, he'd been wearing about 40 pounds, and his weight pocket that I pulled up, it had to have been 25 pounds. And I've added a little air, and I was still stuck plastered to the bottom, because it's a lot of freaking weight. I dive 14 pounds in a dry suit, and I'm trying to get this up, but I'm adding a little weight, and finally I give 4 pulls on the rope, and the tender above gave me 4 pulls back. And I'm like, are you kidding me, dude? And I gave him 4 pulls, and he gave me 4 pulls back. I did that 3 times before I finally said, okay, that's it. And I filled my BC all the way up and added a little extra air to my dry suit, and came up with the salvaged weights. But interesting, fun stories. You definitely learn some interesting things about the divers you're with, and how well they paid attention to your class, or where they think you're at. Maybe they thought I was, he's an instructor, he's fine, he's just giving us a fun couple extra pulls on the rope. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what happened. I was not excited when they said, hey, by the way, we felt your forward pulls, so we gave you forward pulls back. No, no. So the only person that could teach this class is an SSI certified ice diving instructor in active status. I do have insurance and fully in good graces with SSI as well. So I'm fully prepared to teach this for you guys. Key benefits of this course: experience, relax, and interactive dives under the ice. I stole that straight from the manual from McMurdo Station. They have a very good like 3 or 4 page manual that talks about their ice diving. Oddly enough, they certify their divers up to 100 meters under the ice. But they also talk about having 700 feet of viz. So I'm not sure if that's a typo, if they meant 100 feet of viz or 100, but 700 feet of viz seems pretty intense. We're also going to talk about fully understand the effects of on the body during cold water and ice diving. Good news is we're all in Idaho, so we understand a fair amount of that, but we'll go into it a little more detail. We're going to learn how to properly assess diving conditions and use line techniques correctly. Again, if you feel 4 pulls on the rope, pull the diver out. Don't just say, oh, yeah, I felt 4 pulls. Here's your 4 pullers back. I see your 4 pulls, and I call your 4 pulls. Plan safe dives under the ice by using the required specialty equipment. Understand the risks associated with ice diving and overhead environments, as well as learn the roles of surface support and emergency procedures. The value statement: cold weather environments are usually very hostile to divers, topside support personnel, and the equipment. Diving where ice covers is present can be extremely hazardous and require special training equipment. So please be aware that just because you are not in the water doesn't mean you will get cold or get hypothermia. It will be cold. We're standing on ice. 3 weeks ago, the ice was 16 inches thick. You might be quite curious how I knew it was exactly 16 inches thick. And that was because the bar on my chainsaw is 16 inches. And we were buried all the way to the edge of my chainsaw. So it about 45, 50 minutes to cut through and make our pretty little triangle. So it was definitely a fun and engaging experience of what, luckily, as the instructor, I have determined that it's no longer my job to cut the hole. And I used to do that. I used to do that for the students. And I thought, I've cut a few holes. It's time for the students to learn to cut holes. So good news is, you guys will have full opportunity. I encourage you to wear waterproof pants or be in your dry suit when you cut that hole. Water does come out. You will get wet. And it's no fun having wet undergarments in your dry suit. They call it a dry suit for a reason. So we're going to go through that, and we're going to teach you how to make sure that we take care of our surface support, because they are vital as well. On a safety note, once you come out of the hole after your first dive, I will send you into the warming tent. I have a wonderful insulated ice tent, and we have a propane heater. So what we'll do is, as soon as you come out of the hole, de-gear with your entourage, and I'll send you into the heater. That little tent gets to about 85 degrees. It's wonderful. It gets really nice. It's about 99% humidity in there. And you will think it is the greatest place on the face of the earth. My goal is to make sure that you guys dive safely. Also, on that note as well, I am required to do a minimum of 1 dive with each of you. And that's always your first dive. So you'll be going in the hole with me. If I have any concerns or worries, I will do a second dive with you personally. If not, if I feel that you are ready to have the training wheels take off, I will send you in with an equally qualified buddy for your second dive. Typically, I don't like to put more than 2 people in the hole at one time. I can put 3. I'm not super excited about that. It gives you a little bit more freedom. Putting 2 people on a rope or 3 people on a rope is just not a lot of fun, because you get the engine that can, and you get the caboose, and nobody wants to be the caboose. I promise you. Right. So we're all pretty alpha personalities here. So we all want to be the leader of the pack. Right. So I'll give you that opportunity to be the leader of the pack on your own rope. I do put 2 ropes in at the same time. Oh, darn it. That video won't show, will it? Dang it. Let's see. I'm going to cheat and go over to YouTube on this one and give you guys a nice little quick brief what you can expect. Let's see. I am so disappointed all my links are broken. Here we go. We do have a little channel, Teach Me to Dive, and you're welcome to go to that channel and enjoy our videos and interviews and things like that. Come on, you can do it. You can do it. Go YouTube. My darling, would you mind giving me a cup of water?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I will send you the link on that. I apologize. Apparently, YouTube doesn't want to play nicely today. So I will send you guys the link to that. That is on our YouTube channel. It's called Ice Ice Ryrie. As you might guess, it has the Ice Ice Baby song in the background. Course requirements, I'm hoping everybody's over 18, has at least 50 hours or 50 log dives and 25 hours underwater. Aaron, do you think you have at least 25 hours at this point?
You mean per week or total?
I like giving Aaron a hard time. He's got, what, about 10,000 hours underwater now?
I don't know. I spent 8 months 1 year, 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. So I don't know what that adds up to, but a lot.
You've got a few of that. So you should all be at advanced open water or higher, hold equivalent certification. Dry suit is required. I will not put anybody in the hole in wetsuit. I have not seen it done, but I've talked to enough of my friends and international training directors that have seen it done and think it's a really, really bad idea. And I believe that the mantra of a smart man learns from his own mistakes, a brilliant one learns from mistakes of others. So nobody in the hole without a dry suit. I encourage, if you have the ability to wear dry gloves are definitely a wonderful, wonderful thing. I can tell you it's a game changer for ice diving. I did wet gloves for years. And when I changed over dry gloves, I thought, man, why didn't I do this sooner? And then this year was the big learning curve was full face mask. And it was interesting how much warmer you stay by keeping your face warm in that nice little urban jungle you create inside that mask. It's pretty nice. At the end of this course requirements, you're going to have to finish this listening to me for the next 2.5 hours now. I'm going to give you guys a final exam. I'll email it to you. It is open book. If you just the only thing I ask on your open book essay questions, if you had to use your book, please just note had to use book. I won't mark it wrong because you found the answer, but I just like to know where you're weak and where you're strong. There's no illusions here whether you're great or not. I think you're all great to start with, so there's no way to ruin that for me. So just let me know so I can be aware and I can go over that a little bit more in depth, and we could maybe have a one-on-one on that, or I could just we could talk about it on the ice. And then to complete this, you need to do 2 open water dives. The SSI part is I'll also have a waiver for you guys to sign that basically says that if you die during ice diving, that you leave me 90% of your insurance money. So it works out well for me, not so well for you, but it's okay. It's before you get in the water, liabilities must be consent and a medical questionnaire. Please just read through that. Make sure that you are not on any type of medication, especially hypertension or high blood pressure. Or antipsychotic for that matter. I'd like to know if you're psychotic, but that actually, the medications for those 3 are, we'll learn a little bit later on, present a particular hazard for ice diving. So if there's other things that I need to be aware of, just let me know. It's not a big stress. I assume that you guys are active divers, so you got good medicals, but if you are taking one of those medications, I encourage you, just because you're taking it doesn't mean it's gone. It's just under control. So I need to know. Easy enough. So become a diving icon. Obviously, go through the rest of this. You guys all understand that. Expectations from your instructor and me and your dive center. I'm going to give you a thorough class. I'm going to help you get a good understanding of what to expect through my experience and training, and try and make sure that you don't have any questions before we go under the ice. I'm also going to try and make sure that you're safe throughout the whole process. So I will run a safe ice show. If I am in the water, my wife will most likely be running the surface. She is a very experienced ice diver unto herself, as well as just a fantastic person and far smarter than I'll ever be. So she'll make sure to take care of everything on the surface. I just ask that whilst we're on the surface, if you're asked something specific, just whatever the ice boss says, just do it. It's easier. and we can certainly debate it out, but if there's something going on, please let me know. The SSI diver diamond goes through this. The last part is experience in the diver diamond that they talk about. And for me, that's two parts. I'm going to give you the experience so that you're safe, qualified, and understand what we're doing. But I also feel like experience can be looked at in a different direction. I want you to have a fun experience. If you are not having fun in my ice hole, I will kick you out. Just kidding. But this is a fun experience. We'll have fun through the process. We'll enjoy what we're doing. I want you to enjoy this experience. If you don't enjoy what we're doing, why the hell are we doing it? Is my theory on this. There's a lot of other things I can think to do on a Saturday other than cutting a hole and getting wet, right? So let's make sure we're having fun and having a great experience together. If there's anything I can do to help facilitate that, please let me know. If you think I'm being a wet blanket, just say, hey, Benjamin, you're being a wet blanket. Chill out. Okay, I can do that. We're good to go. I take direction pretty well. I am married and happily, so that means I do take direction well. The most common site we're going to use is going to be Ryrie Reservoir. We do it in a great spot. Unfortunately, it's about a 1/4 mile walk across the daggum ice. So that's why we get there at 9 a.m. and we start, I believe one of our divers will be bringing a quad, which I'm very excited about. And if anybody else has that type of stuff, side-by-side or quad, you're more than welcome to bring it and you will not regret it. Once we get out there and get all our gear all set up, we will start cutting the hole. If you have a chainsaw that you'd like to bring, you're more than welcome to bring it. 1 chainsaw is great. 2 chainsaws is much better. 3 is even more fun. It goes a lot faster. Many hands makes light work. Where we cut is going to be in a boat slip. I really love the boat slip because there are anchored pieces that we can anchor off to very easily. This particular dive, that's my son over there. All geared up and ready. With next to the ice tent. This was a windy day, so we had to spike the tent down. But a lot of times, what we like to do is put the tent on the dock. It works wonderfully, and it stays nice and warm in there as well. So we've got lock-off points there. We've got a nice plastic we can sit on top of. I have been a little concerned, heads up, about the speed to which the snow is melting and the weather. If it is unsafe to walk across the ice, I will call that portion, and we will call the manager of the lake who lives at the lake. His name is Bob. He's an ornery cuss. I really like him a lot because he's evenly ornery to everybody. So, and he will let us through the private gate down to the docks. And then we should have to walk down the hill. We can actually walk on the dock to where we're at. So that is plan B. Plan C is if it's really slushy, we'll get on the dock and we'll be very careful. We'll do more of a shore dive. We'll cut from the shore out. It's my hope that we don't have to go to plan B or C, but I do realize that we have them. Max depth below the dock 3 weeks ago was 57 feet. You can get a little deeper if you go out from the docks, but it'll be hard because the rope is 75 feet that I let you on. And the bottom is rocky. There are guidelines for the docks, and we'll talk about that a little bit. You will want to bring a light. It'll make your experience better. There is a fair amount of ambient light, but and we'll go into that a little bit further. But this is an actual photo of where we were at. We've got safety diver to the left. We've got divers ready to go to the right here. That's what's going on here. Let's see. Water visibility. So visibility varies dramatically depending upon the dive location, the time of year. Here in the Northwest, we know all about the algae bloom. Good news is most of the algae bloom has gone and frozen away, but the water is still green and there's still algae and particulates in the water. Right now, once we get somewhere around a month and a half to 2 months after the ice flows over, the visibility starts increasing dramatically, and typically we'll see somewhere between 30 and 50 feet, depend upon what's going on and how things are happening and how much water is being pushed back into the reservoir. So that's typically what we see in terms of visibility. It is definitely encouraged in any lake environment, and especially in the ice environment. You're in overhead. We will do our best to clear some ley lines for us for extra visibility, but that doesn't guarantee that it will actually work as well as we'd hope. Other things to be aware of, this was actually the day of an ice dive. The morning of that we got out, the weather station said -4 degrees. Just for fun, Antarctica that same day was -10 for their mid temperature. So be aware it definitely does get cold. Divers should terminate their dives before their hands become cold. Typically, what happens in cold water diving is most dives end not because of air or any other concerns. They generally tend to end because of cold exposure, and you start getting cold. We start getting that feeling of cold in your fingers, loss of dexterity. If you are shivering, your dive is done. Let's take you in the tent. Let's get you warm. That doesn't mean your dives are done for the day. It just means that dive is done and we want to get you warm. My number one goal is to bring back as many divers from this as I took out, and for them all to not have to ride away in an ambulance. And so if you feel cold, if you feel odd, if you have any type of symptoms at all after their dive, please let me know. I will bring out my first aid kit. I've got a couple bottles of oxygen. I've got a warming blanket. If you get a cut, I've got a new suture stapler kit I'm dying to use. So just let me know what's going on, and I'll be happy to provide the appropriate first aid for you on that. Just realize that this can happen very quickly. Hands get cold, 5 to 10 minutes in the water. It doesn't take much. That is for sure. And also just be aware that hypothermia and coldness has a cumulative effect. And what that means is day one, I'm going out to Roatan and the water is 81 degrees. I'm diving in. I'm in one of those idiots that dives in just shorts. By day 5, on my 25th dive, I'll start noticing a cumulative effect. My body core temperature is a little lower, and I'm feeling like, gosh, I wish I'd had a wetsuit. Whereas day 1, it felt really warm. So cold has a cumulative effect, and so it's to your advantage to be aware of that, and don't be afraid to let us know. If you guys want to bring hot drinks and coffee and all that kind of stuff, Nikki and I don't drink hot drinks, so we don't generally carry that. But by all means, bring a thermos of hot whatever you like, if you'd like. And but we do have the warming tent for you. So ice diving theory. So we're going to talk about today educational resources, divers, I'm going to educate the recreational divers about the ins and outs of diving under the ice. What are the prerequisites for the divers? What points have to be considered with choosing a dive site? What needs to be organized in terms of logistics for the dive site? What special equipment is needed? How is it handled? How are dives under the ice carried out safely? The emphasis in theory lesson should always be on safely conducting these dives under the ice, thus taking into account the special risk of an overhead environment. So special features of ice diving. Requirements for diving under the ice means not being able to surface directly in an overhead environment. Now, has anybody else done an overhead environment or any type of other? What kind of overhead environment have you guys done?
Full cave CCNR, probably 500 hours in the caves.
Nice. Excellent. I didn't realize you guys were CCR divers, so that's awesome.
Yep.
Fantastic. So you're well aware of the idea that you can't direct. Are you both CCR?
Nope.
Not yet. Okay.
She's getting there, working on the journey.
Right on. Well, cool. How about you, Dustin? Any experience with some overhead environment?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Cool. Aaron, you've got a little bit. Where are you at on overhead?
So I've done lots and lots of ice diving, as well as a little bit for commercial diving in tunnels. So that's even worse than because no visibility. Yeah.
Absolutely. How about you, Don? What kind of overhead experience do you have?
I think the closest thing I have to that kind of stuff might be like a dock. That's about it.
Okay, fair enough. Definitely something to be aware of. And, the overall, the principles are the same, right? And whether you're in a cave, whether you're under the ice, whether you're in a tunnel, the first thing is the attitude that you take in to your dive is what separates you from being a victim and being a confident diver that's going to make it out safely. So the first thing is we take the first piece of dive gear that I say that any diver should take is a good attitude, a calm attitude, prepared attitude, right? So if you can take that piece, it's the most expensive piece of dive gear you will ever have is the right attitude, right? It's impossible to buy, and it's it's something you have to have. So start with that. Once you get to the idea with presenting with the right attitude, then the next is making sure we understand all the pieces and we're what we're doing, as well as having the understanding of our equipment. We're comfortable in the equipment we're using. We're comfortable with the people in the service. We're comfortable with the point. The interesting thing is every ice diver I've ever seen start out the first one, they usually get that good death hold on the rope, right? And that's good because that way you can, you just all constantly signal. As you get a little more comfortable in this, I'll see divers let go of that rope for one time or another, and they'll get it back because they know where it's at, and they'll let it go back and forth, and it is what it is, right? In fact, my first ice diving experience is probably of note here. I was diving at this exact spot 6 years ago, and there was two friends of ours, and one of them was a deputy, and one of them was another first time ice diver, and we decided we were going to ice dive by the sheriff's standards, and so we hooked on and we had a 5-minute class, and off we went. So I'm in the hole with another new to ice diver, and I get down about 35, 40 feet. And we're all doing solos because we didn't have enough team to do anything more than that. Yes, this is a bad example, right? This is not one I generally share with open water students ever, right? And so I got to the point where I couldn't see the hole anymore. All I could see was the particulates in the water and just light above me. And I watched the rope go doo, and hit the bottom. I'm telling you right now, first time in the hole, I couldn't see the hole. I didn't know exactly where it was at. I couldn't even see the docks above me. My heart went about 600 miles an hour. I was like, oh my goodness. And so I started grabbing the rope and pulling it up. The only thing that kind of saved me in the back of my mind is like, I know I attached that to the dock. I hope I attached that to the dock because as I'm getting more and more rope, I had 40 feet of rope to kind of pull up and to get that point that I know I did. Did I? I think maybe I and then finally I got tension on it and I finally pulled to the surface and I popped my head out of the hole, and my idiot buddy, and I'm going to call him that, and I call him that more often than not, I was looking at the other diver, the sheriff deputy, and they were having this great conversation, and I looked at him and says, you got to keep tension on the rope. And he says, what? I says, you got to keep tension on the rope so I know where the hole is. He's like, oh, I just thought you wanted to hold the rope. So he'd literally thrown all the rope into the hole. Bad example, and this is what not to do, right? So I can tell you that not being able to surface directly to overhead, but not knowing your exit point clearly is definitely a point of stress. So making sure we're understanding how the equipment works is definitely a key way to keep stress from happening. Understanding how your own equipment works, how the line works, how the signals work, having that tautness, where the exit hole is, definitely helps quite a bit, and having that confidence. And so when we get out to the ice, we'll practice a little bit of rope drill just to make sure you guys understand it. I use a very simple system. I use oath to remember the line signals, and we'll go through that later on through the process. So dives often take place directly under the ice, so there's no contact with the bottom, and this cannot be used as a visual reference point as well. And so that's kind of a little misleading. Like I said, majority of the interesting stuff to see, in my opinion, is within that first 30 feet. If we're diving in a 60-foot area, you'll still be 30 feet above. You should be able to see the bottom where we're at, but honestly, it's dirt, right? There's some nice cement pylons down there, but flip over, look up at the ice. It's really intriguing. So the importance of equipment to the diver's comfort and training is huge. One of the things that we do is a little different. Interestingly enough, when we wrote this manual for SSI, I should say I did, I sent it over to them. The SSI came back and shot back that you're being too safe. We need to thin it out a little bit. And I said, I don't know that I agree with that. And they said, you can use your manual and be as safe as you want to, but we're going to pull some of your safety points out. One of the things that we do that's a little different that you guys aren't accustomed to is, as you can see, is I believe in 2 points of contact on everything. That 1 is none, 2 is 1, right? So we never dive a cave with 1 reel, right? Or just 2 reels, right? 1 is none, 2 is 1. We never dive a cave with just 1 light. Why would we want the rope that's attached to the surface touching us in 1 point? So one of the things that I like to do is I make sure we can connect the rope on one side, we connect the rope on the other side, and then I bring the rope back through the original carabiner. So the idea is if you pull this rope, it pulls the far side carabiner toward the other carabiner, and it actually pulls your straps together. And the idea is if one of them comes off, you still have a second, but if I have to pull you out, it pulls you into your harness more deeply, and there's no way you're getting out of that bad boy. So I believe firmly that having good equipment and understanding how that works is definitely to your advantage. Other pieces are, if you haven't dove a particular piece of equipment, or this is your first time on a BC, please don't bring that out. Bring the one that you're comfortable with. So because you understand how it works, what the individual characteristics of it. Nikki says I've got a hardcore fetish when it comes to dive gear. I think right now I'm up to 7 BCs and I don't know, like 12 or 15 regulator sets. It's bad, right? It's addicting. I want more. And so I just got a new BC from SSI. It's a real nice, it's a skeleton backplate. It's really slick and with 11-liter wing, but I have 3 dives on it now, and I will not bring it out to ice. I'd like to make sure I've got a good understanding of how it works, and so I'll stick with my tried and true. I've got an SMS 100 that in single tank back mount really crushes it. I think I've got around 1,000 dives on this particular rig. So bring out what you're comfortable with. Make sure that all your gear is ice or cold weather certified. I'm telling you right now that your gear, if it's not, it will freeze, and it always freezes the open. And you can tell pretty quickly what happens and how that works. Worst case scenario, we can always put your gear in the warming tent to kind of warm it out and defrost it a little bit. But make sure that it is pre-rated for that as well. So the total diving system that we're going to use, make sure it's simple. It's consistent, it's adaptable, it's reliability, and it's redundancy. So simplicity overall. You don't need a snorkel. In fact, if you do decide that you need to bring a snorkel, that's fantastic. You're welcome to leave it on the dock. I strongly discourage diving with it. I did have a diver 2 sessions ago that brought his snorkel out, and I said, you don't need your snorkel. We talked about that being a problem area. He says, I'm going to dive with it anyway. I'm like, really? Where are you going to use your snorkel? And he looked at me for the longest time, and he says, you're probably right. That might be a tangle hazard, isn't it? Yes. If you'd like to put it in your pocket, you're more than welcome to put it in your pocket. But let's just go ahead. My suggestion is let's leave your snorkel on the dock. You don't need it. So make sure that whatever you do have on there, SMBs. I always love having an SMB except in the ice hole, because I promise you there's no point I'm going to launch an SMB that it's going to be all that useful for me, right? So let's make sure whatever we have is simple, that it's what we need for this. Redundancy is great. I believe firmly. I carry a spare mask. Absolutely. I do carry a reel in my pocket as well. I've got, I think on this rig that I'll be diving on Saturday, I've got 2 or 3 knives. So absolutely. The things I have are the things that I could actually use at diving. So make sure it's simple. It's consistent, right? Make sure that if you have a knife or knives, which you should have more than one, that you can reach it with both hands, right? Being able to only reach a knife with your right hand is probably not the best solution in the entire world. Make sure it's adaptable and that you're able to use it for this ice, and it's reliable. Check your gear out before you come out is definitely to your advantage. Making sure that it's nice and dry before you put it in the back of the truck. You drive for 4 hours from Boise. Just a suggestion. But the wind chill in the back of my pickup gets pretty cold, I'm sure. And then redundancy. Redundancy is always going to be your best friend. You will need 2 larger D-rings. They need to be locking D-rings. You can certainly do the twist and lock. I've seen a lot of people do those, and I have no issues with them. I tend to prefer the twist lock. And I get it. A lot of people say, well, they freeze closed or they get caught. I've been diving the same set of pair of climbing D-rings that twist the lock for the last 5 years. They have yet to have a single issue. I've dove them in salt. I've dove them in freshwater. I've dove them. I took one to Hawaii and I dove it for 11 dives for a total of 16 total hours of dive time in Hawaii. It was fantastic. So, and they're still going. They've got a little rust on them, and I'm okay with that. But no issues with them at all. So a little redundancy goes a long way. Convenience and features. Regular icing is a real thing. It can happen in obviously internal or external. What happens is a little bit of water can get in that regulator very easily and freeze. And then when you go to breathe on it that first time, that a chip of ice will get under the spring and it will hold your regulator open in the open position. It's a very real and meaningful thing. There's a couple simple things to be aware of. We don't check our regulators before we get in. For a deep breath, you give it just a little breath, and that's all you want to do. Once you get in the water, we get in the water without a regulator. It sounds a little counterintuitive, but we don't want to continue breathing on that to cause it to ice up. We're breathing out, a nice humid environment that will freeze up. The other thing is when we do little tests. Same thing with the inflators. I've seen plenty of inflators freeze to the open or freeze closed. It will absolutely happen. Get nice chunks of ice in there. So when you do it, add little puffs of air or do it orally if you need to, but do it little at a time to the point where you've got just what you need as well. They will, again, they do freeze and freeze open very easily. I've seen plenty of external icing happen on my first stage, but at a cold weather rated first stage has never had an issue with me. The only ones I've ever had an issue are if anybody's diving a sheer wood regulator set, I would strongly encourage you to turn that into a paperweight like it deserves and get a real regulator set, because every time I've seen a sheer wood go in the hole, it freezes open or malfunctions on us. And I'm not a fan of Mari's either. I have tried as an SSI instructor, I've tried to be kind and loving and use Mari's gear. I flip and hate it. I got the new professional setup regulator set last year from them as an instructor, and it froze. I took it out to the ice and it froze. It's supposed to be extra cold weather rated. It's a bunch of horse pucky. So make sure you have whatever you have is cold weather rated, because it will definitely happen. When you do get out of the hole, my best encouragement is once you take your regulator out, give it a couple good shakes and try and get as much of the moisture out as you possibly can. And same thing with your inflator. It will definitely pay dividends if you could shake a little bit of that moisture out. Be aware of how much you're using your inflator underneath, because if you're adding a lot of adding and subtracting a lot because you're overweight or whatnot, you'll add a lot of water into your BC as well. So just be aware that will freeze inside your BC. And ice inside your BC bladder is probably not the best place for ice to be. So definitely be aware of that. Jump in when you get in the hole, make sure you're inflated, but without your regulator in your mouth, not breathing. And don't put your regulator in your mouth until you're ready to go down. Little tests, little puffs. It's definitely going to be to your advantage. Definitely buoyancy control systems. I think at this point we all should be pretty spun up and good to go on this. I don't feel like I need to spend a tremendous amount of time on this. There are definitely different ways to go. Whatever you do, you need to make sure that your harness has metal D-rings. I will not hook you up to the rope on plastic D-rings. I don't trust them. And if I don't trust them, I won't use them. If that is the case, I do have a solution for you. I do have 2 full 85-point harnesses. I don't know that they're actually 85-point, but they're full construction harnesses that they go around your legs, they go around your waist, they go over your shoulders, and they connect between the two, and they've got big ass rings on them that are metal. And so I guarantee if I hook that onto you and pull you out, you're coming out. So make sure whatever you do have is simple and works as well. And make sure it's good to go. I don't care if you use a backplate and wing, if you use a jacket style BC. I do have one diver that likes to do side mount. He's the only person I've ever seen do side mount in the ice hole. And it's because I trained him in side mount, and he refuses to do back mount. That's fantastic. He's a competent side mount diver, and I do like it that it has a redundancy point to it as well. So you're good to go on that. Make sure your wings are sufficient to be able to lift you and all your gear as well. So special equipment, environmental protection. How many of us are diving dry gloves? Just curious. Awesome. It makes life a lot easier. So environmental protection, make sure we're using the dry gloves. Undergarments, you're definitely going to want to make sure that you're geared up for 36 degrees. So a thicker undergarment is definitely going to be to your advantage. Just be aware that as we're adding thicker undergarments, it should go without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway, that we're adding a little bit more weight, because as we add a little bit more thickness under our dry suit, we need to account for that additional buoyancy. And I can't tell you how many deputies I've seen put on an extra thick garment underneath in their bag dry suit and then not be able to get down no matter what they tried, and have to have my wife run over to the lead bag and give them another 5 pounds or 6 pounds or 7 pounds or whatever it is. So I've seen that happen plenty of times. So be prepared. If you're going a little thicker, add a little more weight. Some warming items. Will you go get one of those chem packs, babe?
Sure.
They've got some really cool things out there for warming items. You can certainly get the Snap-ems. The problem with the Snap-ems, the ski patrol style, is they work off of oxygen, right? And so if you put a Snap-em in your glove, it'll eat up the pure oxygen in your glove very quickly. And they tend to die very quickly.
They're not the Snap-ems. They're like the chemical
Yeah,
packets where you like
the
rip
chem-
the package open and you
the
shake
chem
it
packs.
so that it gets hot.
So you do have another option on that, and I'm going to kick off. Stop presenting for a second. You should be able to see me now, but they do have these really cool ones. This is straight out of Big Bang Theory, and it's just a gel pack with a little clicker in it. It's pretty neat. If you push the little clicker inside, I just clicked it. You can see that it's exothermic in nature. It's called hot ice, and the whole thing turns hard. What you want to do is you just give it some pushes in there to make sure it's all mixed well. Comes hard, and now it's kind of nice. So it gets all nice and crispy warm. The good news is because it's exothermic, it doesn't use a chemical reaction with air. So it'll last 25, 30 minutes. They're real nice in the gloves because you can they mold very easily to whatever, or you can put them inside your dry suit as well. The other concern with the chemical warmers as well is if you do put them inside your dry suit, they do work off a chemical reaction with air, 21% oxygen, 79% nitrogen. The concern with that is that partial pressures are involved. So you get down to 33 feet, all of a sudden we're working off 42% oxygen. And so there is a concern. I haven't heard it actually happening, but I had a great conversation with Brian Carnes about this. And his biggest concern is that it could cause a burn because it's working on too high. It's burning faster. So you're adding more gasoline to the fire than you really need, right? So that's definitely a large concern to be aware of. So warming items are definitely good. If you're going to use the chemical warmers, I encourage you to use them at the surface. There's another option as well, argon. Argon is 4 times denser than air, and it doesn't carry moisture either. Argon is a fantastic solution for your dry suit. So if you're looking for another way to keep warm, argon is a fantastic way. You do have to have a separate regulator, first stage for it, and a separate hose for your dry suit. But it definitely a good way to go. A pair of waterproof gloves at the surface is definitely to your advantage. Nobody wants to actually do anything in dry gloves as it is, much less try and handle stuff at the surface. So some nice waterproof gloves, because handling the rope at the surface, the rope goes in the water, comes out of the water, I guarantee it's wet, right? So keeping your hands dry is definitely a huge advantage. And then finally, I can't imagine any of us are goofy enough to try and drive a dry suit without a hood. I have heard of it. I'm not sure who that person is that tries that, but it's not me for sure. A good, nice, warm hood. My favorite is the waterproof 789 hood, but Bear makes a great 9mm hood as well. Those are my suggestions. I've used both, love them. We tend to like the waterproof hood. And the reason we like the waterproof hood is because it's orange and it has 3 reflective stripes on the side, so it's very easy to see us in the water. And I have never figured out why all dive supply companies make everything in black, because we are not Navy SEALs, and we're not sneaking up on anything. So everything black is not as easy to see. So I like the orange. All right. Oh, let me go back over to sharing so you can see my screen. Let's see, entire screen. There we go. Share. All right. You guys should be back to seeing my screen coming up now. Take me a quick drink of water. So that's my my pitch on those. Finally, the service program. Every dive shop should have one, but service program to bring your delivery system in, your nitrox delivery system protection in, your information protection. Take your stuff into the shop if you're not really good at working on your own gear. I imagine some of us are, some of us aren't. I'm pretty good about everything. I stop at the regulators, taking the regulators apart. But make sure to have them serviced regularly before you bring them out. On a side note, the other thing we do not do is we don't dive nitrox. Who knows why we don't dive nitrox in under the ice in a dry suit? Well, the first thing is air or oxygen actually carries moisture. So the first problem is the higher the percentage of oxygen you put into your dry suit, the more moisture level it will carry. Nitrogen actually is a zero moisture gas. It cannot carry water molecules with it. It's one of the interesting things why but dealerships are going to, or at least high-end ones, are going to put in only nitrogen in the tires of their sports cars, because it doesn't expand or contract nearly as much as air does, or a content with oxygen. It also doesn't carry moisture in it as well. So your tires will not go up and down nearly as much in the cold because it's a more stable gas. The other part about it is putting nitrox in your system. We all remember the rule of 40, that the higher the percent of oxygen, the more oxidization happens. We have to clean our cylinders and put Viton rings on them so they don't get eaten away. Well, that same thing happens in your dry suit. If you're putting a higher percent of oxygen in there, you're causing oxidization. You're actually causing additional damage to your dry suit that you just don't want to have to do. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not excited about not buying any more dry suits. It's thinking $3,000, right? And so it is what it is. So on a side note, my last ice dive, I was in the tent. I did 7 ice dives for a total of 2 hours of bottom time. And I was in the tent. I was a little cold. I'm pretty happy to be out of my dry suit. And I accidentally let my dry suit foot touch the heater and burn a nice quarter-shaped hole in the bottom of my foot in my dry suit. As my wife looked at me and I looked at her, it's about the closest to crying I think I've ever had. So I did get it fixed and had it repaired over Dive Right In. But yeah, easy enough. All righty. Temperature effects underwater. So hypothermia. Anybody had hypothermia here other than me? Don, tell me about your hypothermia experience.
I was doing some training in Japan, and we were out at like 3 a.m, and it decided to snow and then melt and then get wet, and then we were sitting around. We weren't moving enough to keep up with the heat loss that the temperature was providing. So, and there wasn't anything we could do about it. It was kind of a tactical situation. So we just kind of laid there and froze until they told us we could get up. And by the time I came to, it was, I don't know, like 11 and like a.m. like during the day. Like I blacked out. I don't know what happened.
Wow, you went to extreme. So now, by the way, Don, can you see me on your camera?
Yeah, I can see him.
So that might mean something to you.
Oh gosh, let me see if I can zoom in at all. If you close the presentation, I might see more, but yeah, I can't read it quite.
Oh, it's my second recon coin.
Oh, you were in second recon?
Yeah.
Okay, that was farther than I ever did. I was just base infantry.
Gotcha. Yeah, I started at 0204, combat intelligence officer, specialized in counterintelligence, and then it was 0307, fleet special operations Marine, so officer. So there we go. When you said out Japan and the t-shirt or the hoodie, I figured as much. So there we go. Hoorah. There we go. So hypothermia is definitely a really meaningful thing. My experience with hypothermia was I got it was in June of this last year. We were at Yellowstone Lake. The water temperature was 33 degrees. Ice had just come off the day before. I had a hole in my dry glove about the size of the end of a pin. It was very, very small. And I didn't notice it there. And I could feel a drip in. I just thought I hadn't put my dry glove on well enough. And we went down after about 30 minutes, I'd felt the water drip in, and I felt the pain and the tinglies and the spikes and everything else. And then I stopped feeling that. And then I realized during my dive that I was not able to do basic things, because one of the things I do during my dives, especially cold water dives, is I do a lot of cognitive skills. In fact, most dives, I go through basic math skills. Okay, what's my sac rate? If I breathe, 100 psi over the last 2 minutes, divided by this, multiplied by atmosphere, divided by effort, my sac rate was this. And I try to do that in my mind, right? I do, my ascension rate. Okay, if I'm at 150 feet and I need to get to 60 feet, that's going to take me Then I do the math in my head. And when I got to the point where I couldn't figure it out, I was at 49 feet, and I couldn't figure out how long it was going to take to get to the surface from 49 feet plus a 3-minute safety stop. I realized that I might be having some problems. So I finally got to this. I told my wife, I'm done with this dive. We headed to the surface. I did my 3-minute safety stop. I was kicking back. All I know is I was just foggy, couldn't figure out what was going on, and couldn't do basic stuff. We paddled ashore. I took my dry glove off and I poured it out. It was completely full. I took my dry suit off. My dry suit was wet on the entire left-hand side, enough that I could take the garment and I could wring it out, and it drained. My t-shirt and my LDS garments were all soaked as well, and I took those off, and I was blue on the whole left side of my body, and my wife yelled at me, very deservedly so.
Yeah. The reason why he didn't call the dive sooner is because he didn't want to ruin my dive. I reminded him, anybody can call a dive at any time for any reason. No questions asked.
Absolutely. So please, 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 guys, if you start getting cold or start feeling effects or symptoms, please don't try and power through them. It's not to your advantage. There's always another dive. I will stay out there until you get at least 2 of your dives. And if you are gumption enough and excited enough and want to do a 3rd dive, let's get you in the hole a 3rd time. So please don't power through it. Aaron, tell me about your hypothermia experience.
So was out elk hunting, and when we had a blizzard come in, and it took us about 4 hours to get out of the mountains. And by the time we got back to the truck, none of us could remember our own names pretty much. So we spent the next 4 hours in the truck on medium heat, just trying to be able to think again. And, just temperature drop 30 degrees. You end up sweating while you're working, trying to get out. And then that sweat freezes and it gets cold.
Aaron, that brings up an excellent point. One of the things I want you guys to, and we should have all experienced if we're more Northwest dry suit divers, is getting wet before you get in, or getting sweaty in your dry suit. So one of the reasons I strongly discourage cutting the hole in your dry suit. Make sure you have waterproof pants on, waterproof shoes, waterproof gloves. But there's more often than not that, and out there 5, 10, 15 degrees, when I've been cutting the hole, that I'll strip my jacket off and I'll stand out on the ice in a t-shirt. Because I want to make sure I'm not getting cold. So make sure you dress in layers, because the last thing you want to do is get any of your underlayer wet at any point, because what'll end up happening is that wet will make you colder. So let's stay dry. Let's stay safe. The effects of hypothermia are pretty straightforward. We all know that the first thing, the line of defense, is the brain, heart, liver, and lungs. But it happens for more than one reason. I think the initial idea that we all have with hypothermia is that the brain kicks in, says, wait, got to protect the brain, got to protect the heart, got to protect the liver and the lungs, right? And we think that it's all the brain. But really what ends up happening is, as our extremities get cold, we get a constriction. Vascular constriction is a very common thing to happen during ice diving or cold weather diving. So by natural effect, our limbs, our arms and legs start having vascular constriction because of the cold, causing less blood flow to our extremities as well. So it's not just our brain kicking in and saying, wait, stop, don't pump stuff out there. It's also the external effect of that happening. So the mechanisms kick in. Now, as we start having that vascular constriction to our extremities, Don, why would that be another bad thing during diving? What's another concern we might have during diving for vascular constriction?
If you lose control of your extremities, you're not very well going to be able to control your any movement or any utility that you need to do with your arms, legs.
Absolutely, that's a great point. Dustin, what do you think? In diving, Why do we do safety stops?
Off gassing.
Absolutely. So if I have vascular constriction,
then it's going to slow it down.
absolutely. So I need you guys to be aware of if we're having this happen with vascular constriction, we also have muscle hardening as well. So we have some of our tissue compartments having a much harder time off gassing the needed nitrogen into our system quickly enough or at a normal pace. It's going to be at a much slower pace. Muscle hardening, fat hardening. There's a reason they do cool sculpting, because it hardens that fat, then it makes it go away, right? Well, we're basically doing the same thing all over. We're hardening our fat. We're hardening the muscles. We're vascular constricting. So we're not able to off gas nearly as quickly or easily as we think we can. So in that case, and adding in the fact that we're diving at 5,000 foot elevation, so we're diving deeper than what we think. We're diving about 19 to 18% deeper than what we actually think. How should we treat our ascents and our safety stops? How about you, Cassie?
Slower and longer.
Absolutely. The good news is if you stay in the area that I'm suggesting, go down to the bottom. If you want to see the bottom of the crawdads in the dirt, absolutely do that. But if we stay in that 30 feet, make sure we are coming up slowly, right? Make sure you're taking that time before you come out of the hole. Spend some time, enjoy under the ice. One of the fun things, and I'll try and remember to send out this link as well, is try walk upside down under the ice. That's always a fun thing to do. There's a whole video of it. And for those fun guys in Norway, spend your time, play with it. It looks like mercury under the water, but spend your time there. And once you get done with that, then come out of the hole. But make sure you've given your body plenty of time to off gas. The other thing about this is warming up. When you guys, luckily, it's going to take an hour to 2 hours, or an hour to get off the ice and get everything packed up and get off. But once you get back, I encourage you guys not to run over to the hotel and hop in a hot tub. Warm up at a normal pace. We talk about on burns, for example, that you don't put ice water on it. You put normal water on it. You do room temperature. There's a reason for that. We don't want to shock the system faster than we need to. So hypothermia, we're pretty confident or comfortable in these ideas, but just be aware, cold and numb extremities, lack of muscle coordination, shivering, mental confusion. So there's these, we get those. Those are very clear ideas, but signals of and signs of severe hypothermia include lack of shivering, muscle rigidity, not able to bend. Not only are we just lethargic in nature, but now we've got to that point that we've had that muscle hardening, right? We've got slower breathing. It'll actually slow our pulse rate down. Unconsciousness. We had Donnie talk about that. And respiratory, eventually cardiac arrest. So now the good news is with hypothermia is if we catch it early and we treat it quickly, we have no problems at all. But we need to make sure we understand how to treat hypothermia. The first thing is we try and get the diver dry and warm. And so we try and get them out of their wet equipment, get them into a warming blanket, get them into the heated shelter, right? Start giving warm fluids, start trying to create a warmth in them. In the extreme cases where they start going into cardiac arrest and unconsciousness, that's when we're going to start employing EMT measures, which are going to be a heated blanket. And we can start doing a more of a passive warming where we start getting them warm IVs as well. Now that's at the EMT level. We will not be administering any IVs on the ice, or at least I won't. If you chose to do that, it's all that's all on you. But that's generally an EMT generally dynamic. But that's where we start adding heated blankets as well as heated IVs as well. Are you cooking something?
Yes, I am cooking dinner.
It smells like it's burning. So, gotcha. All right. So here's one that you probably haven't heard of before. This is immersion pulmonary edema. Now, the interesting thing about pulmonary immersion edema is that it really hasn't got a lot of information written about it yet. We very first started studying it and understanding it around 2018. So that's really what it is. what it is it's a point where your body starts creating moisture and water through the alveoli in the lungs. Okay, so literally your lungs sweat from the inside out. If it sweats enough, it causes an internal drowning. And if you when somebody dies of immersion pulmonary edema, if the medical examiner isn't well versed in this and understands it, it will be ruled a pure drowning death. Now, signs and symptoms of this, risk groups and prevention. So it was first discovered in 1989, but it really, even as late as 2016, nobody really knew much about it. It's a condition where they spontaneously fill with water, but divers will start signaling an out of air emergency is the first recognition sign. In fact, the first case study that I remember reading about it was in 2016. Here's what happened. A instructor and an assistant instructor were doing a deep dive class in technical formation. It was a BCAS, British Subaquatic class in a quarry in England. The instructor was a great instructor, and they were all wearing twin sets, so a ton of air. They took their diver over to the 110-foot mark, took him down, and they spent 10 minutes at the 110-foot mark, and started their gradual ascent. At the 90-foot mark, the diver that they were trading signaled that they was out of air. This seemed a little unusual, seeing that they were diving twin set 100 HP steels. Should have been plenty of air. The dive instructor did exactly what he should have done. He got his assistant, said, go ahead and share it. So the assistant and the diver started sharing. They continued up to the 50-foot mark. The diver again signaled that he was out of air, but he was breathing off the assistant instructor's equipment. They went ahead and went to their 30-foot safety stop, and they stopped there, and he signaled once again he was out of air. So the instructor began to share air with him. For the first at the first minute, the diver started to have a panic moment and started to try and bolt to the surface with the instructor's air in second hose in his mouth. The instructor held him into safety stop position per what BCAS felt was appropriate, and kept him down for 2 more minutes. By the time he got him back to the surface, the diver was unresponsive and not breathing. They started rescue breaths and drug him the 150 feet to the edge of the quarry. Began performing hands and breath CPR, but were unfortunately unable to breathe the diver back to health. The dive instructor was actually ended up being sued by the government 2 years later, but unfortunately there wasn't enough information about it. What they did find, though, is as they were going through the medical history of the diver, he had an undisclosed hypertension and high blood pressure issue and was on medication for this. In talking to the people around him, the reason that they felt he didn't disclose it, that he had told them that it was under control, so thus he must not have it anymore because he was on medication for hypertension and high blood pressure. Now, where this is most common is in people who are hypertensive or high blood pressure. Also, people who are taking antipsychotics tend to push and create a more open opportunity for IPO to occur. So we also have a friend who is a instructor trainer for cave diving, he was doing a dive in cave country outside of Orlando. They were about an hour into the cave when the diver they were with began to pass out. He completely passed out. They immediately forced the regulator into his mouth, made sure he had air, started dragging him out, got him through the final restriction about 15 minutes to the end of the cave. All of a sudden, the diver came to and started fighting him, and then finally figured out that what was going on. They were able to keep the regulator in his mouth and get him out of the cave. He didn't remember any of it, but it was another light case of IPO. He began to drown and passed out from lack of oxygen. So if you have a diver that's signaling and having a hard time breathing, complaining of not being able to not having air, there's a good chance that they are experiencing an IPO. So signs and symptoms, just make sure we get this. Breathing difficulties, including rapid or heavy or uneven breathing or coughing uncontrollably when not exercising strenuously. Confusion, swimming in the wrong direction or random direction. Inability to carry out normal functions while appearing to have concentrate on breathing. Belief that a regulator is not working properly or indicating one is out of gas when they have adequate air supply. Rejecting an alternate air source. Indication of difficulty breathing at the surface. Uncontrollable coughing at the surface accompanied by frothy sputum, which may contain blood. Now, one of the cases that they talk about in this, that the doctors talk about IPO, is equipment rejection. I've actually had this happen with a student where they weren't getting enough air and they went into full panic mode. And it's interesting that when a diver goes into full panic mode, when they don't feel that they're getting air, one of the final signs of that is a terminology we call equipment rejection. And we've all seen the video of the young lady who kicks the regulator out, takes the mask off, and starts swimming to the surface. It's a point of equipment rejection or a full panic, and it's very common in IPO. So just be aware that that is definitely a sign and symptom of something to be aware of. It's finally starting to take hold, and it's being added to more and more training agencies. Right now, SSI only adds it at the extended range portion. Patty's is supposed to be adding it in their Tech 45. BCS has it all the way from open water because it was a BCS issue. Or BSAC, sorry, BSAC issue. So it's coming out more, and there's more and more information coming out about it. Just something to be aware of. And that's why we talk about, if you have a diver that is on one of those medications and you are doing cold water diving, it's definitely to your advantage to be aware of that, and have an extra close eye on that. Prevention of this, be honest with your instructor, dive guide, dive buddies about all physical conditions. Just because you take medications for something and think it's in control, you still have to tell them about it, all medications and conditions. If you feel out of breath during a dive, especially in cold water, don't be afraid to end your dive. Resetting your dive and coming back another day is always an option. And I feel strongly that if you are, in fact, I just had a Saturday. I had a situation where we got down, we had 3 inches of viz. I had some divers that it wasn't looking good. One of my divers was having some severe mask problems. I said, stop, we're done. We're all going up. And I brought all my divers to the surface with my dive guides and helped her reset her situation. So I was able to take care of all the students. There's plenty of water out there. The world is, 3/4 water. There's always tomorrow for diving. So don't be afraid to reset a dive in any situation. DCS, I feel strongly we've all got a pretty good understanding of caisson's disease. Does anybody really feel like we need to really go through decompression sickness? We've already kind of touched on DCS and the cold as well. Slower ascents, longer safety stops. Okay. Lung over expansion injury. I'm gonna stick with the idea that we've all got a pretty good understanding that don't hold your breath. It's a bad idea. Diving computers. The things to be aware of in their intended use with this. I'm going to skip the history. We don't need to know the Scripps Institute created the first ones, that the second ones were created in Ohio, that the first actual dive computers for the military were classified. Those just interesting. The limitations of dive computers is while they do take into account altitude to a certain degree, they don't take it all the way into account. Slow your ascent. They also don't take into account the cold that we're diving. And while they'll register cold, there is not an algorithm addition to Bullman for cold. And that would be really cool, in my opinion, to make Bullman 16C, to make it 16D, that takes into account that for every 10 degrees below 80, that it adds 10% to ascents and stops. I think that'd be a really cool thing, and definitely add an additional level of safety, as well as an altitude. It doesn't slow down altitude ascents or increase safety stops based on altitude. So be aware as you look at your computer, it's not always as friendly to you as you want. If you are running textile, I definitely encourage you to pull your gradient factors down. In the Caribbean warm water, Nikki and I generally run a 45-85 or a 50-85. When we dive ice, we're diving a 30-60 to 30-65. If you have a way to change the conservativeness on your computer, then I would definitely go to conservative versus aggressive. Make sure you're taking that extra time, and it's always nice to have that second opinion. So as you're working with your dive computer, take it back to conservative, especially for ice diving, because we want to go slower. We want more time to do what we're doing. Integrated weight systems. I think most of us have a pretty good memory and remember the McDonald Lake situation. Tragic, absolutely heartbreaking. My heart still bleeds for this young lady and her family. Please make sure that when we are using integrated weights, we're using it in some sort of ditchable manner. The last thing we want to do is have a dive buddy not be able to find your weight and be able to ditch it in some way. Now, I get that the idea of using trim weights, but make sure that the majority of your weight is in a ditchable method, either in a weight belt or integrated weight systems. Putting them in your pockets is not a good idea. Make sure that if I'm going down with you, that you let me know where your weights are. And that becomes pretty important here in a moment as well to understand, not just getting up, but understanding how your buddy works, or if we become detached. We've gone through a lot of information. What questions do you guys have at this point?
You have one of the carabiners, the D-rings that you could show us.
Absolutely. Nikki, will you grab a carabiner for one of our sets? Absolutely. I'd be happy to.
Are you just using rock climbing carabiners?
I am. I get the quality. I like the quality aluminum ones.
Oh yeah.
And
Are they on
And they measure them in kilonewtons,
Mine-
which is like, that's the strength both ways. So super
Yeah.
safe.
yeah, they're on a BC downstairs on the gear.
because you were diving your SMS 100.
Yep. My wife is going down to, we have it used to, I had a suite built downstairs for my son that's wonderful. It was wonderful. It had a pop out place for the TV. He's got his own bathroom, a shower down there. And since he's moved out, it's become our scuba room. So it's been pretty wonderful to have a full scuba room. So I've got Nikki getting that right now. Let's see. I wonder if I could. Oh, here we go. She's got one. Let me just go back over my presentation. I'll close that. We've got two types, but they're basically the same thing. So this is what I use personally. I like it because it has the red on it and it literally screws to lock. I make sure not to put any tension on it. I get it to the point where it's closed. I can feel it close, but I don't force it closed. Because even right here, if I put too much tension on it, but I just gently close it until it's all the way closed, and then opens right up. Snap clip with a locking carabiner. Lovingly called in the caving world the clasp of death. So you don't ever get to use this anywhere else, but ice diving, really, I use it in open water in comfortable situations. But in any overhead environments or advanced direct penetrations, I take all of these off. Absolutely. But you'll want two of these. They do have another type that just has a twist and open. And then when you close it, it automatically twists and locks back in place. I don't like them as much. They're a little harder to manipulate in dry gloves as well. Whereas this, once you screw it out of the way, it makes it nice and easy. I want to say at Big Al's or Sportsman's or Dick's Sporting Goods, they're about $15. So it's definitely not a expensive piece. This is the second type we got. We have another type that's full round around, but it's basically the exact same opening, the same company, but it's a full climbing carabiner. And this one is too small to read. It is, let's see, 2,780 kilonewtons. So it's definitely designed for 10,000 pounds or more, which is substantially less than me. My rule of thumb on carabiners was it was always supposed to be 5 to 10 times your weight for pull. So when I was in hardcore rock climbing, I always tried for 10 times my weight. It was kind of the rule of thumb, but 5 to 10 times is what I learned in climbing when I went to mountaineer school in the Marine Corps. But since then, I've always tried to stick with 10 if I could. So that's what I use. They've been fantastic. And you'll want 2 of them per person. So 1 for each side. I will be connecting you guys in 2 separate points. Let's see. We'll go back to what other questions. That was a great question, by the way.
Just to clarify, which drugs specifically are we worried about for IPO? Did you say hypo or hypertension drugs?
Hyper.
Okay.
Hypertension or high blood pressure.
Gotcha.
But if you're on any type of medication at all, other than Advil or aspirin or diver candy, then please let me know and disclose that.
Okay.
So I'll be the first to admit that I keep a bottle of Excedrin in my gear. It happens, and I just read a great article about effects of DCS in remote environments that talked exactly about that. It made me think, gosh, have I been getting just a little DCS and just covering it up with some Excedrin, or do I really have a headache? That's Nikki will tell you that's my fun thing to do when we're driving back and forth to a dive site, that we read dive accident reports, and then I probably read 2 to 5 dive accident reports a week. I've read everything on Dan. In fact, if you're interested, on our channel, I have an hour-and-a-half interview with Dan Orr that I did on Friday. I just posted it tonight on the YouTube channel, and it'll be on our Facebook page tomorrow at 10. So great interview. I had 35 questions. I got through about 15 of my questions that I wanted to ask because we just got in such depth. It was pretty neat talking to Dan Orr. So he lives just north of here, which is really, really cool. So Don, do you know who Dan Orr is?
I do not know.
Dan Orr was the president of Diver Alert Network for many years, and he's far and wide one of the most knowledgeable safety experts in the diving industry. He got certified in 1964. Yeah, he's been diving.
Did they even have dive tables back then?
They did not. And oddly enough, he was involved in developing Trimix for divers and was using Trimix in the 80s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And was one of the people that helped bring nitrox to the dive industry as well. So got some interesting stories, and was using side mount setups when it was a tire inner tube. So interesting interview. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So what other questions you guys have? Yes, sir.
Okay. So is there anything as far as like rescue or safety that we can do with IPO other than get the diver out and warm? Like there's some treatments for like high altitude pulmonary edema that seem like they might transfer over, but I'm not sure if you know whether or not those are effective.
Don't currently, and the problem is the research is still fairly limited on what we have for immersion pulmonary edema. The first thing we do is like anything, throw them on auction, even though literally most of the overexpansion injuries don't need pure auction. So it's all we can do is put them in auction and get them to a EMT as quickly as possible, because most likely what's going to happen is they're going to tube them. They're going to trach them and tube them. So that is, and get them warm so that the lungs stop creating that effect. But all we can do is treat them with oxygen, get them to medical provider as quickly as humanly possible. If they go into cardiac arrest, begin CPR.
Gotcha.
That's the only thing we can do on site. I mean, we're not going to give them hypos, like they do for the climbers on Everest. We're certainly not certified for that or experienced enough to do that.
Right. As an EMT, I'm just curious because this isn't something that was covered like throughout my entire course.
No, this is something interestingly enough. The information on this is pretty thin right now, and it's still coming to light. As far as I can tell, I'm the first instructor to add it to their presentation. The information when I went through XR, I finished my XR instructor in November. And it wasn't in the SSI books in November of last year. My understanding is that they've added it to new books last month, so it's that new. In terms of coming out to the agency. So I thought it was extremely interesting, and especially with what we're doing with ice diving, that I have added it to ice diving. So at least you have some basic information. As more information comes available and I come across it, I will absolutely add it to my presentations and to the book.
I would also say, don't feel bad that it wasn't in your EMT course. We just had a emergency ER surgeon doctor in our stress and rescue course, and he hadn't heard of it either.
Okay.
Yeah. I've got he's a full-blown MD surgeon at the hospital here, and he's like, wow. And so he's going back to research some of it as well.
Awesome.
So it's definitely, the information's thin, but at least we're starting to get it out and be aware that, if you start running into that problem where people are having coughing spells, they're having issues, they're out of breath, they're, even when they have a full abundant gas supply, that they're complaining of being out of air, that these are definitely signs and symptoms that need to throw up some huge red flags. And at least if we can start identifying the red flags, we can start getting them out of the hole quickly. The court did not find the instructor guilty, but he did go through 8 months and went bankrupt trying to defend himself in court. Unfortunately, in England, and is not currently an instructor anymore. So the issue happened in 2016 or 2017. He was sued by the English government in 2020 and has completely left the dive industry, unfortunately. But in reviewing the case, the medical examiner determined it to be a simple drowning, and why they sued him, or the state put a negligent homicide charge on him, was because he held his diver at a minute. The diver tried to go to the surface, and he held him for 2 more minutes below to finish their safety stop to make sure he was safe. And they said if he, their thought process, the non-diving prosecuting attorney thought process was, if he'd let him head to the surface when he tried to bolt to the surface, that he wouldn't have drowned. So it's definitely an interesting argument, and it's much like the Lake McDonald. There's a lot of interesting moving pieces to it to understand, and it's a tragedy all the way around. So,
Gotcha.
So something to be aware of my presentation.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No, I'm happy to. My wife will tell you I'll talk diving all day long and night too. So I'm going to kick back over. My presentation just stopped, so I'm going to find my place again. IPO, decompression sickness, overexpansion, waiting systems was where we're at. Okay, well, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Any more questions? Aaron, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good, Ben.
Okay, awesome. Dustin, any questions?
Yep, good here.
Cool. All right, we'll go back to sharing our screen. My screen should come up in just a moment. All right, let's kick off.
Shush.
Present here. Oh, good. It started from the beginning. That's the video that you want to look up, by the way. It's a fun video. Let's see. I apologize. Hypothermia, IPL, there, DCS, weight pockets. Okay. There we go. So make sure we're using integrated weight systems. That is
So
definitely.
I do have one question for you.
Yes, sir.
So my side mount doesn't have ditchable weights.
Are you going to be diving side mount on Saturday?
I'm going to bring it with me. I don't know whether I'll dive it or not, but not
Suggestion
all
for the
PCDs
first
have
time diver.
ditchable weights.
Yeah, for the first time diving under the ice and to get certified, I encourage running back mount.
Right.
It makes it a simpler process. and less to manage. But in side mount, the idea is if you're running 2 tanks, you can drop a whole tank and you should be able to become buoyant
Right.
by dropping an entire tank. Even if you're diving aluminums, they do start out 3 pounds negative at the beginning and slowly shift to positive towards the end. But there's no way you're going to go through 2 80 cubic foot aluminums under the ice.
Yeah. No.
If you can, you're more man than I am. So
I have questions, but I'll wait and ask you later.
okay, thank you. All right. Let's see other items. Flags and floats. I do bring out a dive flag a lot of times. I think it's funny than to bring it out. But I do like to have the dive flag out because it causes questions. If you are diving a lake and you are not in a position where, like we're at the docks, having some nice flags to make sure that people aren't running over your lines is definitely to your advantage. Signaling devices. Some sort of signaling device underwater is definitely to your advantage. If you become detached from the rope and you have to do an emergency ascent and do what this thing is just being all kinds of work. I'm going to do a full refresh and see if it stops being weird. Gotta love computers. Thankfully, my dive gear is far more reliable. Maybe this is why I was using key presentation from Apple instead of PowerPoint. Keynote, yeah. So signaling devices of some kind, what you'll also find is under the water, under the ice, that people get pretty infatuated and with what they're looking at. And so being able to get their attention in some way is definitely to your advantage. Definitely simple devices are the best and the simplest. Having an extra D-ring is definitely one of your advantages. And one of the things I like to talk about in signaling, before we go down, Nikki and I have a system that she knows that if she hears something specific, that she knows it's me trying to get her attention. And our signal for Nikki and I is, if she hears the 3 taps and 3 taps, 3 taps, she knows I'm trying to get her attention. And I'll stop. That's my signal that it's me. I'm trying to get your attention. It's very distinctive. And I'll do it on my tank, or I'll do it on I have a big blue flashlight I put on my wrist. And that's all you need is something to make noise with, right? Simple enough. You can also bang your tank very easily. Noisemakers of some kind. I discourage strongly the air-powered noisemakers because all you're going to do is freeze it to the open and go to a free flow. But some sort of audible signaling device is going to be to your advantage. Reels and spools. I tend to prefer spools over reels. Reels tend to take up a lot more space and become more of a tangle hazard under the water, but I've carried both. A redundant air source. I don't know if there's a lot of explanation really needed for that. I will bring a redundant air source. A lot of times I will put it on one of the down lines under the ice, under the hole, but you can definitely carry one with you. Pro tip for you with redundant air source on a pony bottle, I keep my redundant air source at 55% nitrox. Any thoughts on why you'd run such a high percentage of nitrox on a pony?
To make it faster for like ascent, decompression, getting out of the water.
Yeah, flush nitrogen a heck of a lot faster.
Nitrogen out quicker.
Absolutely. And the thing about it is, if you think about it, even on 55%, if I do go well below the safety margin for 55%, oxygen toxicity at 200% takes about 4 hours to truthfully set in based upon the latest studies. So even if I'm at 150 feet and I have an emergency where I've got to go to 55%, I'm heading straight to the surface anyway. It's going to take a while for nitrogen or oxygen toxicity to set in anyway. So I prefer to have a very high blend in my pony as an emergency source to add an additional level of safety on that.
They done a research that shows that it's about 26 to 30 minutes before the oxygen toxicity actually sets in. You know what I'm saying? And like probably the 50% nitrox is good to switch at 70 feet is what they're switching in deco anyways, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll be well below that, above that. But overall, I mean, even the first symptoms they're seeing on oxygen toxicity are sore throat and coughing. So it's still pretty mild. And even So even if it's just, we said 20 minutes for that to set in, I'm still going to be well above 50, 70 feet before I get to the point where it's, I'm going to have a problem. So that's my pro tip for the day of what I like. You can certainly do as you would like, but on a pony bottle, the idea is we never breathe it until there's an emergency. If there's an emergency, it means I'm coming to the surface. I would rather have the highest blend that I could possibly carry. Reasonably, going to pure O would be fairly ridiculous, but 55% is a pretty safe blend to carry on a direct ascent to get you and flush that nitrogen very quickly. So that's my encouragement. So when you see my little black mini deco, I've got a 30 cubic foot deco bottle that I'll bring out. I keep it at 55. Other things, cutting tools and divers tools. They're to your advantage to make sure you have at least 2. I like 3, but it's up to you. Make sure that your cutting tools, that you can reach them with either hand. Slates are not a bad idea. You can, if you're down and you need to communicate something and you're not able to clearly get it with hand and arm signals, a slate's a nice way to go. Some extra maintenance tools with you. I always carry a fairly extensive Save-A-Dive kit with me out on the ice. And then if I don't have it on the ice in my truck, I've got a 2,000 piece tool set that if I can't fix it on site with that, then it ain't getting fixed. And then just be aware of your repair limitations. We're not going to take any regulators apart on the ice. Worst case scenario, if we do have an emergency and somebody's regulator goes out, I have no problem grabbing one of my extra regulator sets and handing it off to you and hooking you up with one of mine. I generally bring out a complete extra set in anyway. So you're good to go on that. So choice of dive site is pretty important as we go through this. Anybody ever walked out on the lake and with just 2 inches of clear ice? Oh yeah. How terrifying was that?
The sounds are crazy too.
Absolutely. I'm not sure which is worse, being able to see straight through, watching the cracks, or hearing the sound. When you put all 3 of those together, that is, man, Chucky seems like a freaking church project versus
right.
Ice. It's definitely thick. So making sure that the ice is thick enough. Water depth as well. We try not to dive anything shallower than 15 to 20 feet. Simply for the fact we're going to be in a very turbid area to start with because where we're diving, but it's very easy to hit into that depth and make it even more turbid. Temperature, we got to be aware of how cold is it going to be where we're at. We know that the water temp is probably not going to be much colder than 33 degrees, but making sure that the temperature where we're at, -5 degrees, definitely makes it a tougher dive. We need to make sure that we're prepared for that. I was talking to a friend of mine. His name's Mark Scott. He's an international training director with SSI, who lives in Florida and had some brilliant idea that he wanted to go out and do the ice dive in South Dakota last year. And so he was sent out by SSI to do this. And they were out all week. And the temperatures ranged between 0 and 5 degrees the whole week. When they were checking out their hotel on Monday to go home, the lady at the hotel asked him and said, "Hey, are you guys diving anymore?" And he said, "No, we're going home." She said, "Thank goodness, because we're getting winter conditions are coming in this week." So winter conditions for them, I asked him, I says, "Well, what did that mean?" And he says, then it starts getting to 30 to 40 degrees below zero with wind chill 50 to 60 degrees below zero. So definitely be aware of what you're getting into so you can prepare accordingly. And if it's too cold, call the dive. Wind velocity, high winds, definitely not to your advantage. Current, we don't dive in a current. It's not a safe way to go. This is not that training course. Visibility is definitely a key piece as well. Make sure where you're diving. There's a place we like to dive. We've dove here in Idaho Falls at the base of the river. All year round, no matter where you dive it, we call it a braille dive because if you can't touch it, you can't see it. That just doesn't sound like any fun for me for an ice dive. I want to be able to see the ice. I want to be able to see something. In fact, the last time we dove the river in Idaho Falls, I had something. I felt a current in front of my face that was out of place. It just wasn't correct. And then all of a sudden, I saw the back 3 feet of a 6-foot sturgeon, about 3-4 inches from my mask. but I couldn't see it until it was within 3 inches of my mask. And so all I saw was from the gills down to the tail. And so I would have much rather been able to see the fish than not. So be aware of that. Lighting conditions, we only do these during daylight hours. Bring a flashlight. The snow on the ice definitely is a large impact to light transmission. We will make safety lines for this so that we're able to see. And it'll also give you ley lines of how to find your way back to the hole as well. Reconnaissance. So as we're putting this together, an understanding of where we're going to be at, I will go out Friday evening and I will check the ice and I'll check the surface and make sure that everything is in place, ready to go for us. But we'll also talk about making sure we have transportation. How are we going to get out there? How are we going to get back? If there's an emergency, how are we going to carry an emergency situation back? Ancillary equipment. What will we need additional to our normal stuff? And typically, we're definitely going to need a chainsaw. It's hard to chip through the ice with my screwdriver. We're definitely going to need, I'll bring an insulated ice tent. I'll bring a propane bottle and a heater. I'll also bring some warming blankets, my first aid kit, and I'll probably bring some snacks. And I usually like to bring a bottle of water out on the ice as well and stay hydrated. You get pretty dehydrated out there. You just don't realize it. Fuel for the chainsaw. We never fuel up the chainsaw anywhere but on solid surfaces. We never do it on the ice. Whatever tools we need. I like to bring a couple of snow shovels with us. And I also bring a flat shovel and a pointed shovel to help push the ice under. Clothing and bedding. I'll bring some dry clothes for myself as well, so I'm good to go. Medical evacuation procedures. We'll talk about that. We'll be at Ryrie Reservoir, and my dive briefing on the surface, I'll tell you exactly what the plans for that are. The cell service is mediocre there. There are some spots you get pretty decent, some spots you don't get any. So you definitely need to be prepared with that. And what are communications? How are we going to communicate with the surface, with each other, and with the outside world if something happens? Now remember, entering the ice, ice is dangerous. Always enter at your own risk. Definitely make sure that we're going to work with ice thicknesses that are thick enough. And typically, we want to make sure we have at least 3 to 4 inches of ice before we start walking out, because what you'll find is ice does not freeze evenly. There will be pockets where it'll be thinner versus thicker as well. Even when it's 8 inches thick, you'll still find pockets where it's thicker and thinner. So definitely be aware of it and go through and recon the area so that you know what you're dealing with. We will not be dealing with any flowing water again. So preparation of the dive site, it's pretty straightforward. We're gonna make sure we have some sand, ash, or grit, something to make something it's safe to stand on. The ice definitely gets slick. Shovels. I don't bring any brooms, but I will bring a couple snow shovels and a couple of regular shovels. Some ice screws. Ice screws are great, and here's why. If you are in a place where you don't have something easily tie off to, like a tree or a dock or something solid, a good quality ice screw is definitely a great way to go. And practice it before you start tying things down, and make sure that you understand how it's used. Another thing you can also carry a safety procedure as well on your dive kit is an ice screw as well. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. A poker with a long handle is definitely makes it nice to be able to push the ice under. At least 2 lines. That should be a nice contrasting color. A dark green or black rope is not your most advantageous. The 2 ropes that we'll use a fluorescent green, and we'll use a safety orange. They show up both very nicely in the water. You can also use a buddy leash. I don't like using a buddy leash. Here's why. As you go down on your line and you tie your buddy off to you on the same line, now wherever your buddy goes, you all of a sudden now have a Siamese twin. And diving with a Siamese twin is not nearly as fun as you might think it might be. If you've ever desired to have a Siamese twin, we can certainly tie you up to your spouse or your buddy and let you wander around the ice. And you'll learn very quickly it's not a lot of fun. Locking carabiners. You can use non-locking carabiners, but you have to have 4 of them. And what we do is you put 2 on in opposing directions. So it clips one way and clips the other way on each side. So you have to have 4. I much prefer you guys come with locking carabiners. They can freeze, but if you use them correctly, it won't happen. A rubber mat, I'll bring a couple. You can go over to Michael's or or Ross or whatever. You can get the yoga mats. They work great. I'll bring a couple yoga mats. Brightly colored warning, barricade, and construction tape. And I also bring some spikes as well, so we can spike. And when we're done with the hole, we will line it out with nice bright red or yellow safety tape, marking stakes, and then tie-off points for safety. So the location of the entry hole is pretty important. We need to make sure that we can easily get to it. It's safe. That it's in a place where we have ability to tie off. That it has an ability to have enough depth below us so we can get out of it. The first thing we're going to do is we get ready to prepare the hole. Is we're going to clear all the snow from around it as best we possibly can to get down to the hard ice. It makes it a lot easier for the chainsaw to work. Using a snow shovel is the easiest way to do this. The next thing I like to do is I like to mark out the hole to exactly how big I'm going to do it. And typically, we want to make it a triangle and about 3 to 4 meters in each direction at a 120-degree angle for the primary. It needs to be large enough and sufficient size for 3 divers to be able to get in and out. As you might be aware, in our nice dry suits, we are a little bit more like the Michelin Man or the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. So we're a little bigger than normal. So if you make it big enough for 3 divers, you're going to be good to go. Now, who should use the chainsaw? What do you think? Probably a person that's used the chainsaw before.
Right.
Yeah. So somebody who's used a chainsaw before that has a good understanding. As you're using the chainsaw, I see this happen all the time, and I've been guilty of it as well. Please make sure you're standing on the outside of the hole instead of on the inside of the hole. The ice gives way more quickly than you might think sometimes. So as you're cutting the hole, make sure you understand how to use the chainsaw. The best way to use the chainsaw is I like to cut small holes and then get deeper as I go along. So if you take about 3 or 4 feet and you cut about 3 or 4 inches down and then go back and cut 3 or 4 more inches down and then 3 or 4 more inches down, it makes it easier on the chainsaw and safer for you until you keep going until you find the ice. I'll generally go through and I'll get about 3 to 6 inches cut of the entire hole cut, and then I'll go back and I'll start working on one side at a time till once I've got everything done as well. In working with the dock, make sure that we cut the point of the triangle far enough away from the end of the dock that the dock won't impede the diver getting out. Now, excellent question for you, Dustin. Why do we cut a triangle?
Makes entry and exit simpler, less splashable on your entry, and your exits are easier to grab.
Absolutely. It's easier to get in and out of. Now, again, this is a very entourage intensive sport. So typically the easiest way to do is what I'll have each one of you do when you're ready to get out is I'll have you back up to the hole with your tank, and then we'll have 1 or 2 divers come over on either side of you and grab you by the tank, count 1, 2, 3, and pull you out. But if you don't have nice divers like us and they want to be big jerks, you can also come to the corner of the hole. You can do a bounce out and bounce in. So you go down and then bounce out, just like we teach in open water at the pool, how to do a deep water exit. And it makes it a lot easier, especially when you do a nice 120-degree cut like this is. So you want it to be longer at one end. Getting out on these corners is a lot harder than getting out on this corner. Other things to be aware of is in cutting the hole. Once we've got the hole cut, the easiest thing to do is cut an anarchy single at the top and cut one of the corners off. It makes it a lot easier to push under. So you cut that first small triangle out, you push that under, and it makes it a lot easier to push that piece down and push the whole piece from behind underneath. Other thing is as you're cutting the hole, make sure you're cutting the holes nice and straight down. If you cut them at an angle in, it will make it a lot easier and a lot harder and a lot more cuts. The ice was so thick this last time, we actually ended up cutting one small triangle out, and then we came down to about here. and cut another hole across and push this bigger chunk under because it was just too thick to push under. How should you dress doing this? Dress warm, dress in layers, and make sure that your pants and your boots are waterproof. I've cut this enough times that I've had to thin down to a t-shirt so I wouldn't sweat. But you definitely want to make sure. I wear snow pants and snow boots, and that works pretty well. I'd also encourage bringing a spare pair of socks as well. So when you change in your dry suit, you're able to change into clean, dry socks. As Don will tell you, that's probably the number one piece of advice every Marine infantryman knows: carry a pair of dry socks. It's just good practice, and your mom would be proud. The ice chunks, we're going to push them under the. We haven't had an issue with it at this particular location. We've been able to push it under and get it around one of the lines, so that it's deep enough under so it won't slip back out. But you can also cut straight through the ice into the chunk of ice, and you can put a pole through it and pin it into place. Once we get ready to get done with the hole, a lot of times what we'll do is I will dive in. I will take rope and I will put it around the back edges of the ice. Then I will get out of the hole and we will pull the hole back into place as well. Emergency holes, we won't be cutting emergency holes because we won't be far enough away. The dock we have some huge advantages. If something happens and you get disoriented, you always have the rope, but you'll be able to look straight up and you'll be able to see the docks. And if you can find the dock, it's a single dock that's two-sided. You'll be able to find your way back to the hole. You'll just have to simply follow the dock back to the end of the hole, and you'll find the hole very easily. There's also guidelines that hold the dock in place that go straight to the bottom. So definitely be aware that they are there. They are on the center portion of the dock. So when you do your dives, dive away from the docks instead of towards the docks. It's very easy. I've done it plenty of times where I've gone down, done some searching, and ended up winding around those lines. So be aware. So dive away from the docks. So hole safety. So around the hole, we're going to clear snow in a wagon wheel pattern for 20 meters around the hole. Dustin, why do you think we do that?
Visibility. Light can come through the ice so you can find your directions.
Absolutely. It makes a ley line so that you can see under. It also allows a lot more light transmission, so you'll have a better dive. But it also gives you a point where if you can find that line, you can find your arrow back to the line. We've had bad luck with putting safety mats out. I haven't found a good safety mat that I like, but if you can get the good restaurant style, put safety mats out there, it does get slick close to the hole. And I've seen plenty of times where people have gotten a little close to the hole and started to slip. I haven't seen anybody slip and fall into the hole, but definitely be aware that next to the hole, the water splashes out, and it definitely does. Sometimes we'll take and go get some dirt, and we'll put some dirt and gravel around that. The challenge I've found is that it's great for a little bit, but it definitely washes away. We talked a little bit about it, but make sure you're watching for obstacles as well. As you can see, we're going to be cutting between the docks, which creates a natural tie-off point for us, an additional safety, but it also makes an additional obstacle. As you're stepping off the dock onto the ice, it's going to be slick. Make sure I cut a hole far enough away from the dock that we can get out very easily as well. As we're diving, there will be ley lines or tie lines for the docks that will be there. So be aware of obstacles as we're diving. Contingency plan, a shelter, and if possible, heated location is highly recommended. We will have that. Warm, non-alcoholic dry drinks should be available. So warm water for thawing equipment if necessary. An emergency plan must also take into account the problem of hypothermia, as well as the possibility of more difficult access routes and communications like dead spots. So it must be constantly ensured that neither the diver safety nor the surface teams freeze. At the first sign of freezing, you have to react immediately. This also applies to divers in the water as well. So hypothermia is a real and meaningful thing. So if you're tending line and you're getting to the point where you're cold and you're shivering, please ask myself or my wife to they say, hey, I need to get some time in the warming tent, we will absolutely let you go in the warming tent. If we have to stop dive operations, we will stop dive operations. I have no problem with that. I believe firmly that Nikki and I live by the rule that anybody can call a dive for any reason with no repercussions. So if enough people are cold and we all want to go stand in the tent, the last time, or not last time, but one of the times we put 7 people in my little tent and we all stood there and got warm. It was wonderful. It was like 85 degrees in there and we had a great time. We even shot a video of everybody standing in my little 3-person tent. So if we need to cut dive operations and go in the tent and all get warm, I am completely cool with that. I have no issues with that at all. Your safety is my paramount concern. All right. Total diving system and additional equipment. So scuba regulators, inflators, and purge valves. So when diving in cold water, the diver should avoid purging the second stage of the or use the power inflator excessively. If the regulator is allowed to free flow at depth, for as little as 5 seconds, or if a BC or dry suit inflator is used excessively, it can freeze up. Now, it's definitely be aware of. You also have the inflator on your dry suit, so be aware. Short puffs. Don't go. Shh, oh, I'm cold. Shh. You really shouldn't be doing that anyway. But as qualified dry suit divers, we all know just a little puff goes a long way. So just short puffs to make sure you go through that. I have seen regulators go into full free flow during diving. In fact, last dive I was at, one of my deputies that I was working with was diving in FFM and had a shearwood freaking second stage, safety second, that went into free flow. I was probably 6-7 feet from him, and we were close enough to the hole and so fresh into the dive that I decided to allow him the opportunity to solve the issue himself. And he whacked it a few times, whacked it a couple times. I started to head towards him because I was going to grab it, whack it, and detune it for him and give him, because he wasn't trying to detune it. By the time I got within 3 feet of him, he ripped his FFM off and stuck it in his mouth and tried to breathe on it. It was hilarious. As I looked at him, I was like, well, this dive just ended. And we immediately went straight to the surface. We were only about 4 feet down. So, we weren't very far from the hole at all. We got to the surface. I was able to grab his regulator and detune it, get it stop free flowing. But a lot of times, if we do have that happen, when somebody at the surface support will grab your tank and turn your air off as well while we fix the issue. So that's definitely something we can do. But just be aware that it doesn't take a lot for your regulators to go into free flow, or your dry suit to go to free flow. Be aware, if you do go into a free flow on your dry suit, you will be going to the surface. Make sure to detach that bad boy, head to the hole. Start heading to the hole. If your inflator goes to free flow, make sure you're detaching that. We're all experienced enough divers that we should know this, but I like to make sure we bring that up. So single hose regulators should be kept in a warm place. I'll be the first to admit I'm really bad. I know my gear is strong, so after my dives, I'll shake it out, make sure to get as much water out as I possibly can. I'll take it off and I'll leave it outside. But if it's prone to freezing, don't be afraid to take it in the tent with you and let it get warm. Let it defrost in there. Nobody will say boo to you about that at all. It is a smaller little entrance. It's got that little kind of triangle entrance to get in the tent. But absolutely, take it in there, let it sit in there, get warm. Nobody's going to fault you at all. Once we start gearing up, we need to make sure that once we're geared up on the side, sitting on the dock itself, that once we're ready to go, that we get in the hole, we give the okay, we deflate, we start down. The last thing we want to do is sit on the surface for long periods of time. Let's see. I have done that. It is not a really fun place to sit and wait, and you definitely will get cold very quickly. And so let's make sure that whatever you do, that you gear up, and then once we're ready to get in the hole, you're ready to get in the hole, let's go. And then we get in the hole, give that quick check. We drop down 3 or 4 feet. We do our quick bubble check to make sure everything looks good to go. And then if you're diving with me, whatever you want to do is what I will follow you. I'll stay within about 20 feet of you at any given time to and observe. If you have any issues, please let me know, but I'll have good eyes on you. At this point, I want to give you the freedom to do it. We'll also each be on our own individual line, and we'll each have our own individual line tender as well. Let's see. If water needs to be purged from the mouthpiece, the diver should do so by exhaling. So don't do the free flow. All right. Safety requirements for diving: a dry suit, two tanks is a great way to go. Diaphragmatic style regulator. Snorkel should not be attached to the mask. And I'm sorry to say, on dive 1, I do not let you have a camera. I've loosened up on the standard. If on dive 2, if I feel uncomfortable and you want a camera, I'll let you bring a camera on dive 2. But dive 1, I want to make sure you're focusing on you, focusing on your buoyancy, focusing on the ice, focusing on the experience, focusing on getting comfortable. But like I said, if I'm comfortable with you diving without me on dive 2, absolutely. If you have a GoPro or dive camera of some kind, you can absolutely bring it along. If you have a drone, I don't worry too much about that. Just try not to operate your drone while you're sitting in the ice. So get some weird people sometimes. Full face mask. I definitely encourage a good full face mask. You guys are going with the Ocean Reefs at some point. They have a fantastic ABV on them. This is mine. This is an OTS, and that big thing on the right hand side is a ABV valve. You'll definitely want to use that at the surface. It's that way you're not breathing on your regulator. Redundant air sources, definitely a great way to go. Twin sets, fantastic with a complete redundant air source or a pony bottle is definitely encouraged. If you'd like to dive that, I definitely encourage that if you have it available to you. I will bring one out, and I will most likely on dive 1 hang it on the line so that it's below. But it's definitely a nice way to go because things do happen. We'll be close enough to the surface at any given time that if you do go to free flow, we'll be able to get you out of the hole faster than you can run out of air. Shouldn't need to talk about this.
Question.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
In a twin set with no additional weight, is that a problem?
Nope.
There's nothing ditchable. Just okay.
It's by the point if you're experienced enough to run twin sets, then I'm not worried too much about you at this point. You definitely want to make sure that you have enough bladder to be able to handle twin sets. Plus, you'll be diving a dry suit as well.
Yeah.
So I can tell you though that getting heavy twin sets. So if you're going to dive twin sets, my suggestion is twin 50s. They're light enough to be able to drag you out of the water very easily. And with twin 50s, you'll probably need additional lead. Diving twin 80 steels or twin 100 steels. I personally dive twin set 100 at HP 100s.
What I dive.
A lot of freaking weight to pull out of the hole.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
my suggestion is if you do decide to do twin sets, that's great. But twin 50s is about as big as I would go on a dive like this because you're not adding that much weight. So SPGs, shouldn't need to go on that. Timing devices are going to be very important. All our dives will be 15 minutes, no longer than 20 minutes. And I do that for safety, for your safety as well as my safety. And my joke is if it is 20 minutes and I haven't seen you pull out of the water yet, I will pull you out like a big fish. That's very embarrassing. We'll make fun of you the whole rest of the day. So please keep an eye on your time and make sure that you're 15 minutes, but no more than 20. Shouldn't be that big a deal. We're all diving dry gloves, but it will be cold, and you'll about 20 minutes is about a comfortable dive. You'll definitely want a depth gauge to give an idea where you're at. There are points where you won't be able to see the bottom possibly, and you won't be able to see the ice. I've had that happen. So having an understanding and a depth gauge is to your advantage, and good gauges. So the minimum equipment required by every scuba diver for under ice operations consists of obviously variable volume dry suit, approved cold water open surface scuba. We're not doing any CCR with this. Mask or approved full face mask. Weights is required. BC with or backplate and wing. Knife cutting devices to be able to cut 8 to 10 millimeters of cord. Reason being why that specific number is the cord we use is 8 to 10 millimeters in thickness. Fins, timing device, depth gauge, SPG. Approved harness or BC with shoulder and metal D-rings. And a crotch strap is recommended for additional safety. Lifeline tending lines and communication ropes. A stainless steel ice screw is strongly encouraged. You can get them on Amazon. Just be aware that when you see that pretty picture of them on Amazon, and it shows 6 screws for $80, you only get 1 screw. It's just showing you all the different sizes that are available in the colors. I found that out the hard way. I paid $80 and I got 1. And I was like, I felt very cheated on that. But it's very nice. It's extremely light. It's a titanium and it's very cool. It's very sharp. It's cool. Glow tubes. Some sort of dive light glow tube for the back of your tank is very nice and makes it a lot easier to see you at a distance as well. Or if you were to get lost, it makes it easier to see you. And a noise making device. I also encourage an actual light as well. If you're going to be doing any video at all, you'll want a light. But it makes it easier to see you, and it makes a great visual signaling device as well. Underwater signaling devices can be very simple. They make these Aquacraft makes a little shaker that's pretty neat. Tank bangers, they're okay. They're just kind of a pain in the butt to get to. I like an extra D-ring because it's just nice metal and I can bang it on my light. This looks pretty much like my light that I'll be carrying. So a nice underwater light. I like having a little bit nicer light that has the ability to go to a flashing mode as well, an SOS, if something were to happen. So definitely a good quality light. I suggest 2. Ice screws. This looks exactly like my ice screw. Make sure before you go in the hole, if you're carrying an ice screw, practice on the ice before you go down. It's a little bit more difficult, a little different than what you might think. So make sure you practice on the ground and making sure your perfect placement, you look for a good, solid, flat piece of ice. You place it at a perfect perpendicular angle. You push on it and you begin screwing until you get to the end of the threads. Now, I know all the guys here are used to getting their screwdriver and cranking that son of a gun down. Don't do that with an ice screw. You get it to the point where you end at end of the threads, and that's as far as you go. And the reason being is we don't want to go past the point where we're getting in there, we're cracking the ice and putting too much pressure on there. You want to get as much tension on that as pull tension on that as you possibly can. So don't maximize, just get it to the point where it's either flush or to the end of the screws. But practice on the surface before you do it, and make sure that you have a good understanding before you take it down and try to figure it out when you're lost. Be aware that we are working in the most uncomfortable and most buoyant area of diving. So it's definitely going to be to your advantage. I mean, how many of us in our dry suits in cold water dive at 15 feet continuously, right? And typically we get our dry suit on and we get down to 50, 60 feet or whatever. If I'm diving Ryrie, then or one of which is a lot like Lucky Peak, my goal is to get us down to 90 to 100 feet because that's where the great visibility is. So if we're diving at that 15 to 20 foot mark, we're going to be a lot more buoyant than we're typically used to. Adding a little extra weight is to your advantage. And while I'm not a big fan of overweighting any diver, a couple extra pounds will go a lot of way and make your dive a lot more comfortable. Just simply the fact we're used to being well buoyant and well weighted at 60 feet. This is a little different. Never, ever add weight to your storage pockets. Make sure it's always easily ditchable. And also talk to your dive buddy about where your ditchable weight is and how it works. For example, my wife has a Aqualung Rogue. Her weight is behind her and it pulls straight down, right? So it's a little different. On my SMS that I'll be diving on Saturday, you can't just grab them and pull them. There's 2 lock clips, so you have to undo the clips and then they just fall right out. So just be aware that how you understand what your buddy has and how those work as well. Once the diver is in the water with a fully inflated DC, quickly ensure that their positively buoyant is achieved, but also we're going to also talk about and make sure we go down and do a weight check and a bubble check as well. I want to see you guys get to 2 to 3 feet below the water comfortably and easily. And then once we do that, I'll do a quick bubble check and look to see that you have no bubbles. If you wouldn't mind terribly, check my bubbles as well, and make sure I'm not bubbling, and just give me the okay. My symbol for bubbles is like this. So I'm asked bubbles, and if no bubbles, let's go. Let's and I will follow you around to the end of your 75-foot rope. If you want to go as far out as you possibly can, I've got one of my divers, his favorite thing to do is go as far out in this direction as you possibly can, and then circle back and then come back in and then go as far out this way as you can and check. I swear he's like a poodle on a leash. He wants to find the very edge of that leash on every direction to know where his yard is. And that's fine. And he'll be, Ivan will be there on Saturday with us as well. So we've got 2 other divers joining us on Saturday as well. So clothing, make sure that the line tenders are warm and safe. Make sure that you are dry and I would suggest starting with dry, warm socks as well. Make sure we're taking, if you feel cold, let somebody know. It's up to you to let us know. I can't read minds. Unfortunately, SSI doesn't have a mind reading course for me. When they do, I'll take it. But until then, you have to tell me what's going on. Make sure that we have all the ancillary equipment that we possibly need. Your cutting tools, a platform, your chainsaws, steel screws, whatever you need, make sure we have that with us. This looks exactly like my dive shelter, so that's why I like putting this picture up. Don't use kerosene or propane heaters that aren't designed for indoor use. We have an indoor use propane heater, and I've got some nice vents on this as well. This little tent, I can tell you, gets about 85 degrees. It is wonderful to get back after a dive to hop into. At the end of your dive, once your entourage has derobed you, I would like you each to go into that tent and spend at least 1 dive cycle in that tent getting warm. Take your dry gloves off, use the propane. I'll bring a folding chair, a camping chair that I'll throw in there. You're welcome to bring camping chairs as well. It makes it easier to get changed. Go sit in there and get warm and enjoy. Bring you some snacks, whatever you're into, Krispy Kreme to carrots, whatever makes you happy, it makes me happy too. So conducting the dive. Now, again, let's just pause here. We've gone through a lot of information. What questions do you have?
None here.
Does anybody need a quick potty break? Going once, going twice.
Do we need to bring another tent?
Do we
If you'd
need
like to, you're welcome
Okay.
to.
Ice tent or buddy heater, the whole 9 yards.
If you bring in another tent, I'd encourage bringing another heater as well. You are more than welcome to. I've got mine. It works very well, but you're welcome to bring another. Just realize we'll be carrying it about a quarter mile across the snow and the ice. So I tend to be fairly judicious in what I bring and what I don't bring.
Right.
So if you're bringing a side by side, that'd be wonderful, or a quad. I believe Ivan is. So that's going to be a nice piece. So. All right. So when we get out in the ice, we're going to, like any dive, we're going to go through our dive plan, and we're going to go through and make sure we talk about what's the objective of today's dive. And I mean, while it seems like a little common sense, our objective is to get in the water and go into the ice. But we're going to be doing a train dive. So maximum depth and distance. Maximum depth for you guys is going to be 57 feet because that's where the sand is. I like diving there because of that. Maximum distance is going to be 75 feet. We're going to make sure we're staying in the no decompression limit. If you can get outside the no decompression limit at 57 feet in under 20 minutes, good on you. You've got a very, very, very conservative dive computer. Our dive time we're going to talk about is going to be 15 minutes, no more than 20. Maximum time until emergency is called. That's going to be an individual thing, and it's going to be based upon the dive site commander. If we pull a rope and there's nobody at the end of it, emergency is called immediately. All divers out of the water, we're going to begin a search. So generally, emergency is called immediately upon discovering that there's a problem. If I have a diver that has an issue, a medical emergency, we will recall all divers immediately, and immediately begin first aid and appropriate medical procedures, as well as call 911, begin getting them to the vehicle, and make the determination what needs to happen next. As part of that, we're going to talk about the direction of travel. And there, in this particular case, there's 180 degrees of travel that you can go out in, and we're going to talk about that when we get out there because it'll make more sense if you can see that. Dive hand signals. One signal that you may or may not be familiar with. I'm going to bring back over so you can see me. If you see me do this, it means we're ending dive right now. For me, and when I teach diving, this means descend, this means level off, come up a little bit, go down a little bit. With me, this means end of dive. But if I'm ending dive, I'll be doing this and I'll be doing this at the same time. It means we're going up now. There's a problem. We're done. So that's something that you may or may not be aware of. For me, with using gas, what's your gas? Obviously, I use front of hand for 1 through 5, back of hand for 6 through 9. But I've been diving with enough different divers that whatever signals you typically do, I'll probably know and have no problem with. Honestly, we shouldn't have a gas issue out there at all, since we're only doing 15-minute dives, and most likely you'll be doing just 2 15-minute dives. Worst case scenario, 3, or best case scenario, 3. I haven't had anybody want to do more than 3 dives. My current record is 7. That's a lot of dives in one day for under the ice. I end up on that day with 2 hours of bottom time, according to my computer, and 3 hours in the water, because I had a diver have an issue and had to get out, and they had another diver get in his place, and started down and then had a problem, got it back. Yeah, it was all kinds of fun. But those are the ones just to be aware of. This means we're ending now. We've had a problem. Let's see. We're going to go through hand and arm signals. We'll go through the line signals again. We're going to talk about the line signals in greater depth here shortly. Diving audible signals. If you hear, that's me trying to get your attention. You can absolutely do that. Those 3 symbols to me as well, if you're trying to get my attention for whatever needs to happen. If there's a problem, please just let me know. You know, my ear's a problem. I'm cold. If I cross my arms like that, or if I ask you, are you cold? Let me know. Little cold, cold. You can give me a hand signal for this. Just means a little cold if you cross your arms over your chest like that. And I'll ask you, are you okay? Are you cold? And if you aren't, no, I'm just good. I'm good to go. So please don't be a tough guy or a tough girl. I know you guys are fantastic and superstars and can climb massive mountains all by yourself. But this is not the place to do that. Review of lost line procedures. We're going to go through that again on the ice as well, to make sure that we understand what that process is if something happens and we lose a line. All right, so safety stops. If you guys do decide to spend about all 15 of your minutes at 57 feet, please be aware that
sharing your screen, Ben, so we can't see your slides.
Thank you so much. I keep forgetting about that. There we go. All right. So be aware on safety stops and ascents. Typically, we want to make sure we're staying at 20 feet a minute or slower. We are in cold water. We're doing something we're uncomfortable with and we haven't done before. And interestingly enough, I don't know if you who all here has dove the crater before. I imagine most of us. But if you've dove the crater before, did you realize in the waiver that they have that their waiver says that you will dive or ascend at no faster than 25 feet per minute? It's actually in their waiver. I've seen it. It's pretty cool. And that's because of the altitude. We suggest 20 feet per minute or slower, simply for the fact because we're diving 5,000 foot elevation as well as 36 degrees. If you plan to do a safety stop and you because you spent all that time down there, make sure you do your safety stop at 10 minutes for a minimum of 3 to 5 minutes as well. So take your time, be safe, right? Please don't start your ascent at 17 minutes from 57 feet. Because what'll end up happening is you'll get to your safety stop at 3, thinking you're going to do 5 minutes at the 3-minute mark, which makes a total of 20 minutes. Somebody at the surface will be pulling you out like a big fish, and it's really embarrassing. I haven't had to do it yet, but if it does, one day it'll be hilarious, I'm sure. Like I said, when ice is doing, we're going to erect our shelter. Make sure you're in that. So tender's sole responsibility is to monitor the progress of their diver and be prepared to pull that ice diver back, as well as give them peace of mind that somebody is at the surface. The tenders at the site are to make sure they keep track of direction of travel and distance from the hole. Now, one of the things I've done on the student ropes is I've made marks at every 10 feet. I've got one line for 10 feet, 2 lines for 20 feet, 3 lines for 30 feet. You never guess what's at 40 feet, right? 44 lines, right? So as you're looking at the line, you'll be able to know how far out your diver is. You only have a total of 75 feet. If something happens and your diver loses their rope, you should be able to look down at your rope and say, my diver was out 40 feet at this direction. In accordance with the guidelines, all dive leaders must be CPR certified. So all of us at this point should be CPR and oxygen provider certified. If you are not, please let me know, and I won't put you in that position where you need to utilize those skills. Let's see. We're not going to be cutting escape holes, but we will be creating navigation lines. And this is basically what they're going to look like. This is a little bit more organized than ours will be, to be honest with you, but we'll be making a wagging wheel of about 20 feet out in as many directions as we can do. The challenge is our dock will be right about here. So we'll make a ley line out and out and out. So we won't be able to make ley lines in this position. We're going to clean it out as best we can, and we'll try and make the ley lines about 3 feet wide and as close to the ice as we humanly possibly can. Now, tending lines are mandatory when under the ice. A braided or twisted polyurethane rope is to your advantage, making sure that it's safe and it's going to be able to pull you back if something happens. We're going to, unlike this diver, we're going to connect you in two points. And the way I do that is I connect you with the first point on the side that you want the rope to come off of. I'll put the second line or knot, overhand knot on your other side. And then I'll bring the line back through the original side, and then we'll lock it down. That way, when I pull this line, it'll pull your straps together. Now, safety line preparation, what we've discovered is we want to make sure that our safety line is at least twice the distance of the line that we're using. The good news is the safety line that we'll be using is 70 meters, so it's plenty of line. What we've also discovered is it's a good idea to make sure that we check the safety line and the lines for the divers every single time to make sure that they're free of knots, tangles, brays, cuts, wears, anything like that. We also take the safety line and what we'll do is we will line it out so it is completely ready to go. That's what you see. That's what we're doing here is we're straightening the line out and putting it out so it's completely stretched so we can see the entire line so nothing could catch on it and we can use it quickly in an emergency. We always have a safety diver ready to go at any time there's divers under the ice. If something were to happen, we can go down and get them. Glow tubes we already talked about. Designated teams. We're going to make sure we talk about the teams. Our teams will be very simple. We're going to have one instructor and one diver in the hole. We're going to have one line tender for each one of those persons individually. We're also going to have a safety diver ready to go. The safety diver will be fully ready, fully dressed, gear, mask, everything, and attached to the safety line. And there will be somebody ready to run the safety diver's line as well. So now you can see very quickly that we need a fair amount of people to ice dive. This is not just a 2 people go out or 3 people go out and ice dive. We want to make sure that we have enough people ready to go that if something were to happen, that we're prepared for this at any time. So let's talk about that safety line as well as the line signals. I love this joke because it's actually fairly accurate as well. So now, wait a minute. You said 2 jerks means more slack. 3 meant come up. And you never said anything about a long, steady pull. So the safety line must be connected to something solid, firmly attached to an ice screw, a tree, the dock, etc. The safety line must be free of knots. Example, coiled up in a box or a linen bag. The 2 ends of the safety line are attached to carabiners by a bowline or a figure 8 directly attached to the fixed point of the surface, and the diver's D-rings via the harness or locking carabiners at 2 points on contact in every diver. For added safety, the diver tying off to both shoulder D-rings via locking carabiners, or one shoulder D-ring via locking carabiner and a full body harness via locking carabiners is preferable. If you guys do not have a suitable BC, I do have a complete safety harness that I'm happy to put you in. We will put you in that first, and then put your BC on next and tie you to that. The safety line should be always kept taut, but not so taut that it hinders the diver. So you want to keep enough tension on that I can feel that you're there, but loose enough that I can go out as I want to go, that I'm able to do what I need to do, that I'm not fighting you like a fish on a line, right? The safety line should remain in the diver's hand during all operations of the dive, if possible, so that they're able to communicate with the service and remain connected at all times should an emergency arise. Simply enough, there'll be plenty of times where you can let go of the rope for a short period of time, but you want to make sure that it's short periods of time, because if I communicate with you, you want to be able to communicate back. About every 2 to 3 minutes, it's my encouragement that the safety diver or the line tender give a single pull on the rope. Every pull on the rope is a question, whether I'm the diver or I'm the line tender. It means that I need a response to let me know that what's going on. The first line signal we're going to talk about today is going to be O for oath, in oath. And it's going to be okay. So the line signals we use are oath. O for okay, A for advance, T for take line in, 4 for help, 4 or more. So simply enough, if I'm down and I'm the diver, I'm going to pull the line one time. Diver to tender, I'm okay. The tender is going to say, give one tug back. Good, I know you're okay. If the tender gives a single pull to the diver, he's asking, are you okay? The diver is going to respond with, I'm okay. If I need a little more slack and the line tender is holding my line a little bit hard, the diver can give 2 pulls. If he gives 2 pulls, the line tender will give 2 pulls back and then allow the line to go out and give him some more slack. Now, the magic question is, what happens if the diver's at 75 feet and he gives 2 pulls up to the line tender? The line tender simply gives 3 pulls back. Dude, you're at the end of the line. There is no more line available to you. The diver themselves can give 3 pulls, say in anticipation, I'm coming back, take up the slack, or I'm not comfortable. I need you to give me a little more tension. So the diver can give 3 pulls. Now, the good news is this is also in the book that I sent over to you as well. And I'd be happy to email you a screenshot of the slide as well if you'd like. Just ask later. The final one is 4 pulls. 4 pulls from the diver is come up now. 4 pulls from the diver is I'm come up now. I'm coming up. It's emergency. Pull me in. Something's going on. Oh crap! I call it the oh shit single, to be honest with you. So 4 pulls means there should be no answer to that. It means the tender should start pulling that diver in. You feel full pulls. Don't answer him back. Okay, good. 4 pulls, and then don't do anything. Start pulling immediately, because 4 pulls means there's an emergency, and we don't want to. We're not answering that. We're fixing it right now. If I get 4 pulls, I'm the diver. That means come up now. It doesn't mean in a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. It means I'm coming up now. And so you don't need to answer. You need to start coming in, because they're going to start pulling you in. So, and just repeat it. It should mean help send me the safety diver. If you can't pull them out and you just keep getting 4 more pulls, that means send the safety diver in. So we remember it by the term oath. O for okay, A for advance, T for take, H for help. Simple enough?
Yep.
Easy enough. So next, exits and entries. The easiest way to get into the hole is the safest and easiest, right? Simple enough, sit on your butt, slide your butt in. You don't need to do a giant stride into this. I have. It's kind of fun. I discourage it because it's a small hole, and it adds an additional level of safety that you don't need to deal with that. But once we're getting ready to exit, we're finally out at that point of the hole. We simply communicate with the line tender. I'm ready to come out. Swim over to one of the corners. I encourage swimming over to the narrowest corner, back up to the hole. Two surface support people will come over. They'll grab your tank, give you a 1, 2, 3, dunk you a little bit, and pull you out and pull you up onto the surface. If you need to, and you're the only one there, you can come up straight to that hole. You can do a deep water exit, simply go down, kick, and come right out, and you can get right out. I can tell you with all the gear on that you have, it's a little bit more difficult than you might think, and the ice is slick. Keep clicking on the wrong slide. There we go. So during the dive, at first it's normal to have the desire to head directly to the bottom, but ice diving, especially when starting out, should be noted the most interesting part of the dive is at interacting with the ice itself. Diving to the bottom under the ice isn't really any different than any cold water diving that you're going to do. So just be aware. So pre-dive briefing, we're going to talk about the dive time, rule of thirds. Make sure we're not using more than a third of our gas at any given time for out. What happens if you do get detached? What tasks are going to happen and what that emergency procedure is going to look like? How we'll talk about are lights necessary and how is the view? How is the clarity of the water? So possible emergency situation we're going to deal. The first one we deal with is loss of visibility. I've seen plenty of my sheriff deputies that aren't great at buoyancy go down, and nothing against the sheriff deputies there, Don, but I have discovered that the majority of deputies in their bag suits are used to adding an extra 20 pounds of weight that they don't need and sinking down and trying to walk along the bottom like Davy Jones. They're not into buoyancy. They're into be on the bottom, and the amount of muck and crap and crud that they kick up is pretty impressive. So loss of visibility is something to be aware of. So make sure that we're dealing with good buoyancy. This is definitely a buoyancy sport. I mean, I've often said this, that if you ever want to be really good at buoyancy, go take a cave course because you have to be good at buoyancy or you're going to be bouncing off things. So definitely make sure you're swimming calmly and you're not stirring up the bottom if you are going down. Also be aware that if it's dark and your light goes out, that definitely doesn't make as fun a dive as it could be. And definitely if your light goes out and you can't see, go ahead and head to the surface. Somebody else will probably be willing to lend you a light if you promise not to lose it. Entanglement. Entanglement is a very real thing, especially with where we're diving. And there's definitely other things that are going to be cables and wires or guidelines may become slack or can become an entangle hindrance. Best way to avoid entanglement is just avoid it completely. Make sure is just the best practice. So stay neutral, stay tight on the line, and avoid hazards. If you do get entangled, remain calm and allow your buddy to provide assistance if the entanglement occurs. If you're just at that point, I mean, you've got a dive buddy down there, signal them, give your signal, flash your light. Hey, look, I'm entangled. They'll be more than happy to come over, but remain calm. Don't get all tangled up in things. Where we're at, the only thing you'd be aware of is our entanglements that we'll see are going to be the direct lines from the dock going down. Now, the big one that everybody asks, what happens if I lose a line? If this situation occurs, do not try to find the way out. What you want to do is make sure you maintain buoyancy. Begin a slow circle to determine if the line is within sight and reach. That's important. If you can't see it, don't search for it. If you can't reach it, don't search for it. After 2 full rotations and the line is not discovered, what you want to do is begin a slow ascent to the surface of the ice. This is not a race. If we can't feel you at the surface because you've lost the line, we're going to be doing our part and preparing the safety diver to get in the hole immediately. Once you've ascended to the underside of the ice, remove your weight or ditch your weight and allow it to drop. Thread your ice screw into the underside of the ice, clip into with a quick locking carabiner or something similar to maintain position and prevent fatigue. It's easy to get tired of there. You're already going to be tired from just getting your gear on and getting in the hole. That takes a fair amount. Locate a light and select the flashing feature if available. Locate your underwater noise-making device and begin a rhythmic noise, making an SOS continuously until found. Remain in the vertical position. It's huge. To maximize your profile and thereby creating a snag for when the safety diver's rope comes past you. Watch for the line and the lifeline on the standby diver and wait for the standby diver to arrive. The lost diver shall not attempt to relocate the hole. The diver must remain calm and watch for a standby diver. Again, don't attempt to try and find the exit point. Wait for the safety diver. Now, Cassie, I can't remember your husband's name. I'm sorry.
Norm.
Norm, there we go. I'm just having a brain aneurysm. So Norm, I know with all your cave training, your first instinct is going to be to put a ice screw in, pull your spool out, and then start a lost line search. I know exactly. I've already had this argument. A friend of ours is an international training director for instructor trainers for cave divers, and he and I argued this out. He has a lot more cave experience than all of us put together. I have a lot more ice diving experience than he has.
Right.
So wait for the safety diver. You're not going to be that far away. The safety diver will find you. Don't pull your reel out and start trying to search. If that line breaks, you become it becomes a bigger problem, right? Than you really want to deal with. So we will talk about what the safety diver will do and what that looks like as a safety diver in just a moment. But that's their key piece. Look for the line. Do 2 full circles. If you don't see the line or can't reach the line, begin your ascent. Get to the surface and remain there in the vertical position. Okay. What'll happen is there's going to be a safety diver come past you. I'm going to send them out twice the distance, and their rope will literally snag you. They will begin a circular search around where you should be until they find you, and they'll keep coming back in 10 feet at a time until they come all the way back the hole. If we don't find you in the first round, I'll send them out 3 times the distance and start searching for you again in the area where you should be. Okay. We will keep searching until we find you. There should be plenty of air. And we'll talk about what the safety diver's position looks like in a moment. Now, the only real true emergency in overhead diving is out of gas. This is the only real emergency that can happen in overhead environment. If you lose the line, you can come to the surface. If you go to a free flow, you can come to the surface. But if you actually run out of gas, now this can be avoided by very simply dive plan management and proper gas management. If this occurs, immediately switch to your redundant air source. If this is not available, share air with your buddy. Regardless of new air source, immediately end the dive. Even if you're on twin sets and you're able to go to a redundant air source or to a pony or to a stage, our dive is done for the day, or for that, at least that time we're coming to the surface. Operating precautions. General precautions for ice diving and water operations should include divers should be well rested, have a meal and high in carbohydrates and protein, no alcohol. I shouldn't really need to go through this, but I like to just kind of read through it, just make sure you guys are good to go. Paired divers and partners are required when ice diving. Divers must practice emergency air sharing prior to operation. So I would hope that all of us are pretty good to go on air sharing, since a lot of us are instructors, but I definitely like to go through air sharing. Don, I'm not sure where you're at in this, and Dustin, I'm not sure where you're at in this. So I will go through the procedures for air sharing at the surface as part of my dive briefing and the procedures for that. Just remember, just like any of the trade agencies talk about, all the skills that we use for emergencies are perishable skills. If you are not practicing them on a regular basis, you get rusty at them, right? So Cassie and Norm and I, as instructors, we practice these a fair amount. We see them a fair amount, so we're probably pretty good to go on them. But you lose track of that. So we'll talk about that at the service to make sure that you're good to go. Now, while any divers are in the water, the standby diver will be fully attached to an independent safety line, fully dressed in their appropriate dive gear and ready to dive at any given time. So if you're in the water, there's going to be a safety diver ready to go. Now, in water precautions, Because severe chilling can result in impaired judgments, the task to be performed under the water must be clearly identified, practiced, and kept simple. A dive should be terminated upon the onset of involuntary shivering or severe impairment or manual dexterity. If the exposure chute tears or floods, the dive ends immediately. Divers and diver supervisors must be aware of the cumulative effect, thermal effect of repetitive diving. A thermal debt can accumulate over successive diving days, resulting in increased fatigue and reduced performance. Also, lifelines contacting protrusion and projections from the bottom of the ice can imitate line pull signals to the tender. So the tender must be able to distinguish the difference between them. So beware that if you keep that good taut line, a clear signal will be a clear signal, and practice those. Before we go in the hole, what I like to do with the divers is go through one set of line signals so that you feel what it feels like as you're in the water. Simple enough. Good news is the tasks that I'm going to ask you to perform, I'm going to ask you to get into a neutral buoyant position and a diver's position. I'm going to ask you to enjoy yourself and enjoy looking at the ice. I will not ask you to do any mass drills, regular drills, emergency drills while we're in the ice. I will not do that. It's not safe. And it's, in my opinion, highly against standard. So your entire skill will be being able to get down, get in neutral buoyant position, and get into dive position. That's all I'm asking of you for skills. Pretty simple. All right. All right. Post-dive procedure. Just realize you're going to be tired coming out of the water. It is what it is. Upon exiting the water, make sure that you're derobing, dethroning, and you're getting into the tent. It's going to be to your advantage. Crack your dry suit, let the air in, get warm air into your dry suit, get your dry gloves on, get your hands warm as well. The diver should remove any wet dress, dry off, and make sure that you're safe and feel warm. Get some liquid in you as well. My only suggestion is while you're wearing a dry suit, be cognizant of how much liquid you take in because, well, we don't really need to go down that road. I think we all get that one. It's easy to turn a dry suit into a wetsuit. Let's just put it that way. And some people in this room have experience with that. So I'm just going to put that out there. All right. We've talked about this to extent. Let's see. Lost diver. So what happens if we have a lost diver? What we're the lost diver is going to ascend to the underside of the ice, remove their weight belt, thread the ice screw, remain in the vertical position, and watch for the lifeline. But searching for the lost diver. As soon as the tender fails to get a response from the diver must notify the diving supervisor immediately and deploy the safety diver immediately. I need to repeat that. So if you're not getting a response, and I don't mean that I gave them an okay and they didn't say anything back, I'm clearly not getting any response from my diver. They are not responding, or the line is completely loose and it just comes all the way back in. Immediately upon not feeling the diver or not getting a response, something's wrong. We're immediately going to notify whoever is running the surface and immediately deploy the safety diver. The tender should be aware of the last known direction and distance of the disconnected diver. Give the safety diver a compass with its heading at approximately 90 degrees clockwise from the disconnected diver. Okay, that's important. So 90 degrees clockwise. So if I feel like they're at their due north, I'm going to send them out 90 degrees clockwise from that last position. The safety diver is going to head out with enough line that's 50% farther, twice the distance than the disconnected diver is at. When the safety diver arrives at the necessary position, the tender will stop their progress with a single pull of the line. The diver should return the single pull to let them know and keep the line tethered tight and swim in a counterclockwise position to the last known position. They go out at 90 degrees to the last known position and start swimming clockwise to that, or counterclockwise to that, they should run across the diver. And from that point out, we're going Once they've completed one full rotation, we're going to bring them back in 10 feet for every rotation until we find the diver. If we don't find them on the first round, we're going to send them out 3 times the distance again and bring them back in at 10 feet each rotation. Simple enough. Now, procedures to be implemented in a wall. We're going to recall all the divers immediately. If there's another diver in the water, they're coming out of the water now. The diving supervisor must eliminate or estimate the probable location of the lost diver by assessing the diver's speed and direction of travel. As directed by the diving supervisor, the standby diver will enter the water 90 degrees clockwise as indicated. The tender must keep the standby diver's lifeline taut. The standby diver will conduct a circular sweep in counterclockwise direction. When the lifeline snags on the lost diver, the standby diver swims towards the diver, signaling the tender to take up slack. Upon locating the lost diver, the standby diver assists the diver back to the hole. If the first sweep fails, it should be repeated once again at the maximum distance of the safety line. In our case, our line is very long, so we're going to do it at 3 times the distance. If the subsequent search fails, the tender should continue these concentric circles at 10 feet reduced distance until the safety diver is within 10 feet of the hole. What questions do you guys have? Again, this is all in the manual as well, so I encourage reading the manual. All right, one of the most common things that we run into during diving is the free flow regulator. When the free flow goes to free flow, the best thing you can possibly do is honestly breathe off the regulator that is free flowing. It's why you use twice the amount of gas off our regulator than what's already going. So breathe off that regulator and immediately begin your ascent to the surface if you do not have an alternative air source. If you have an alternative air source, switch to your alternative air source and begin immediately your ascent to the surface. Inflator malfunction. If you have a dry suit overinflation, simple enough. Detach the hose from your dry suit. If you're on an uncontrolled ascent, take your left hand or your right hand, whichever you're most comfortable with. Okay, raise it towards the surface. Take your glove off and pull the seal out and start flooding your dry suit to slow down your ascent. If you have a buoyancy compensator overinflation, detach it. Detach the inflator hose from that. See hypothermia, diver disorientation, we've talked about, lost hole. I've got a few of these slides in there a few times. I'm still working on getting this presentation exactly where I want it. So again, avoidance of entanglement is your best policy and best procedure. That ends the presentation. Now, questions? Don,
Sorry?
what questions do you have, Don?
I was just reading through notes to see if I missed anything.
No worries.
I'm gonna drop something and I rolled over here. Thank you.
Cassie, what do you two have questions on? We went through a lot of information. A lot of it was fairly redundant, I'm sure, for you guys, but
No questions.
good. How about you, Aaron? What questions do you have?
I'm good, thanks.
Awesome. Dustin?
Yeah, it was good. Great. Thank you.
Awesome. So just a couple quick questions. So if we have a lost diver, Cassie, what do you do? If you lose the line, what's your procedure?
Immediately tell the dive supervisor.
Excellent. If you're the diver, what do you do?
Ascend up and place the screw.
Don't forget to drop your weights.
Drop
Just-
the weight.
Before you start your ascent, though.
Yeah.
Do 2
excellent.
circles and look to see if you see or feel the line.
Exactly. So start by seeing if you can see the line. If it's within reach or within sight, then you're good to go still. But if it's not within sight after 2 full circles, start a slow ascent. If you have an ice screw, go to the surface, lock in with your ice screw. If you are carrying an ice screw, please practice it on the ice before you go down. it definitely will be to your advantage. They're a little unwieldy and it's a little different than what you might think. And then wait, we will find you. Dustin, what direction do I send the diver out from where my say diver out?
90 degrees from the diver's direction.
90 degrees, which direction? Clockwise, counterclockwise?
Clockwise, because he's going to go counterclockwise his search.
Exactly. So all searches are done in a counterclockwise way. Aaron, if you see one of the divers getting cold, shivering, what do we do?
Ask them if they're too cold, and then end the dive if they need to come to the surface to get them warm.
Absolutely. Sounds good to me.